Welcome to World War II Stories for Sleep. Tonight there is nothing urgent for you to do. There is nowhere you need to go. There is no message you need to answer, no task you need to finish, no thought you need to hold tightly in your mind. For the next little while, you may simply rest and listen, and let the quiet shape of an old story move slowly around you. This is not a story of battle. This is not a story of noise or danger or sudden movement. This is a quiet story from the hidden edges of history, from the long hours that are rarely remembered, from the spaces between great events, when ordinary people carried out ordinary duties in a world that had become uncertain, and still found small moments of warmth, patience, routine, and rest. So allow your body to become comfortable. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands rest wherever they have fallen. Let your breathing become a little slower, not forced, not counted too carefully, only gently noticed, like a tide moving in and out along a dark shore. And as you breathe, imagine the room around you becoming still. The light grows softer. The edges of the day become less important. The thoughts that have been moving quickly begin to move more slowly, and somewhere far away, beyond the room, beyond the streets, beyond the modern world, there is a wide Atlantic night. It is midnight. The sea is dark. The wind is low. And on the surface of the water, under a sky of scattered clouds and faint stars, a long steel vessel rests quietly before slipping beneath the waves. Tonight, we follow the slow, hushed hours aboard a U-boat at midnight. Not the hours of alarm, not the hours of conflict. Only the quiet hours. The waiting hours. The human hours. The hours of warm coffee in enamel mugs, red instrument lights glowing softly over brass and glass, wool blankets folded in narrow bunks, damp coats hanging from hooks, paper charts curling slightly in the heavy air, and tired men speaking in low voices so that others may sleep. The boat is small, the ocean is immense, and between them is the soft rhythm of routine. As you listen, you do not need to remember every detail. You do not need to follow the story closely. You may let the words pass over you like water over a hull. You may drift in and out. You may imagine the gentle hum of the engines, the faint creak of metal, the slow settling of the vessel as it leaves the surface, the warm enclosed air after the cold wind above. Nothing sudden will happen here. Nothing will ask you to be alert. This is only a quiet night beneath the sea, told slowly, gently, and safely, until the story becomes more like a dream than a journey. So breathe in softly and breathe out slowly. Let the room fade. Let the day fade. Let the surface of the world grow distant. And now, very slowly, we begin. The Atlantic at midnight is not truly black, although at first glance it seems that way. It holds many shades of darkness. There is the deep blue darkness beneath the clouds, the grey-black darkness in the hollows between the waves, the silver darkness where moonlight touches the crests and then disappears, and the wide, patient darkness of the horizon, where sea and sky meet without a clear line between them. The wind moves low over the water, not hard enough to break the night, only strong enough to comb the surface into long, quiet lines. The waves rise and fall with a slow, heavy rhythm. They lift the boat. They let it settle. They lift it again. And the vessel answers with small sounds of its own. A muted creak of wet metal. A soft slap of water against the outer hull. A faint vibration from below, steady and contained. The conning tower is slick with salt spray. The deck shines faintly in the dark. The rails are cold beneath gloved hands. There are men above for a short time, moving carefully under the night sky, their coats buttoned high, their caps pulled low, their faces half hidden from the wind. They do not speak much. At this hour, speech seems too large for the open sea. A few words pass quietly between them, carried away almost as soon as they are spoken. A hand points. A head nods. A boot shifts on the damp deck. Somewhere a shaded light is lifted and then turned down again. The boat is on the surface, but only for a little while longer. Above, the stars are pale and scattered, visible in breaks between the clouds. Below, the Atlantic waits in its cold, immense silence. The men know both worlds. They know the openness of the deck, with wind pressing against the face and spray gathering on sleeves. They know the narrow world below with its warmth, its dampness, its red lights, its pipes and wheels and gauges, its smell of oil and wool and coffee. They know the change between the two. They know the way the outside night gives way to the enclosed night inside the boat, and because they know it so well, the change is not frightening. It is part of the rhythm. The duty performed slowly, a familiar passage from cold air into warmer air, from the sky into the steel, from the surface into the submerged hush below. The hatch is open now. Warm air rises from within the tower, carrying the close, unmistakable scent of life inside a submarine. Diesel oil. Damp clothing, metal warmed by machinery, strong coffee, old paper, leather, salt. The faint human warmth of too many men living in too little space. It is not the clean air of a house with open windows, nor the fresh wind of the deck, but it is known, and because it is known, it has its own comfort. One by one, the men descend. A gloved hand finds the ladder. A boot rests on the first rung. Then the next. The wind fades slightly. The sea becomes less a force against the face, and more a presence beyond the metal skin. Inside the tower, the light changes. It becomes lower, warmer, more secret. The steel around the ladder is dark with use. Hands have polished certain edges without meaning to, simply by touching them night after night. A latch glints faintly. A pipe runs overhead. A narrow shadow moves as a man below turns aside to make space. Everything is close. Every movement is measured. Nothing happens quickly because quickness has no room here. The boat teaches slowness. It teaches care. It teaches the body to become aware of shoulders, elbows, knees, boots, cups, valves, wires, and sleeping men. It teaches that a quiet step is a kindness. The last man comes down from the night. For a moment, a little cold wind follows him through the hatch, carrying rain, salt, and the memory of open water. Then the hatch closes. The sound is heavy, practical, final. Not dramatic, only complete. Outside remains outside. Inside becomes inside. And the vessel is no longer a dark shape under the sky. It is a small moving world under the sea. The air changes as the boat prepares to dive. There is a subtle shift in pressure, almost imagined at first. Men take their places. Hands go to wheels and levers. Eyes settle on gauges. A voice speaks softly, and another answers. The boat begins its descent not as a fall, but as a careful agreement between metal, water, weight, and human attention. The surface lifts away. The movement of the waves grows duller. The long rolling of the sea is replaced by something deeper, slower, more contained. Water slides over the casing above. The outside world becomes a muted pressure, a dark blanket folded over the vessel. Inside, the red instrument lights seem to glow more warmly now that the hatch is closed. They are not bright. They do not try to imitate daylight. They preserve the night. They keep the eyes gentle. They make the control room feel almost like a lantern carried beneath the Atlantic. The central control room is narrow, crowded, and purposeful. Every inch has been given work to do. There are gauges with pale faces and dark needles. There are wheels worn smooth where hands have held them. There are pipes overhead and along the walls. There are labels stenciled onto metal. There are wires tucked away as neatly as the space allows. There is a chart table with a shaded lamp. There is a logbook, a pencil, a cup, a cloth, a folded note, a pair of dividers catching a little amber light along their brass legs. The men move through this room with the quiet coordination of people who have lived too long in narrow quarters to waste motion. A shoulder turns before it reaches an obstacle. A hand lifts before a sleeve can brush a lever. A man waits half a breath for another to pass. The boat descends. Slowly. Steadily. Submerged now. The word seems to change the air. Submerged. It means that the world above has become distant. It means that the stars and the cold wind have been replaced by instruments and shadows. It means that the ocean is no longer something seen from the deck, but something felt all around, patient and immense. It means that the boat has entered the private dark beneath the waves, where time is measured by watches, readings, cups of coffee, and the slow changing of tired faces in red light. A watchman stands near the depth gauge. He does not stare in alarm, he simply watches. His eyes move from one instrument to another in a familiar pattern. Depth, trim, battery, air, course, time. Depth again. The needles do not leap. They drift and hold, answering the quiet work of the men around them. The watchman's face is half lit by red, half hidden in shadow. He looks younger in one moment and older in the next, the way people do in low light when tiredness and responsibility rest together on the same face. Behind him, another man writes in the logbook. The pencil makes a dry, soft sound against paper. The pages have absorbed dampness and no longer lie perfectly flat. The handwriting is plain and careful. A date, an hour, a reading, a note, nothing that would sound important if spoken aloud, and yet these small facts are how the night is held together. The machinery hums through the boat. It does not roar, not tonight. It hums, it murmurs. It sends a low vibration through the floor plates and along the ribs of the vessel. That vibration rises through boots, through legs, through the body, until the men no longer feel separate from it. It becomes a kind of inner weather, a mechanical tide. There is the steady tone of engines running low, the soft breath of air moving through vents, the occasional tick of cooling metal. The faint complaint of something strapped down but not perfectly still. A pump begins, works for a short while, and grows quiet again. A valve turns with a small metallic whisper. A cup is placed on a narrow shelf with a careful click. Over time, none of these sounds remain separate. They gather into one surrounding presence. A steady, rhythmic, submerged sound, the sound of a vessel awake in the dark. The control room smells of warm metal, oil, stale air, damp wool, and coffee. The coffee is strong and dark, kept hot in a small pot where space allows. It is not made for pleasure in any delicate sense. It is made because warmth matters, because bitterness can be useful, because a cup held between both hands can remind a tired man that he still has a body. Steam rises briefly and disappears in the red light. Someone takes a small sip and closes his eyes for only a second. Someone else rubs the bridge of his nose and returns to the gauges. The night is long, but it is not empty. It is filled with small acts of staying awake. Outside the hull, the Atlantic presses close. No one can see the water now. No one can see the moon or the clouds or the broken silver lines on the surface. But everyone knows the sea is there. It surrounds the boat completely. It carries the boat and confines it at the same time. It is above, below, beside, ahead, behind. The ocean is everywhere, but inside the control room it is translated into sounds, numbers, and sensations. A faint creak, a shift of trim, a needle holding steady, a coolness along one section of metal. A depth reading spoken quietly. The ocean becomes known through instruments and through habit. The men do not need to imagine its full size. That would be too much. They only need to know the next small fact, the next reading, the next correction, the next quiet breath. The chart table glows under its shaded lamp. The map of the Atlantic lies open, softened by handling and damp air. On paper, the sea is pale and orderly, crossed by lines, marks, measurements, and penciled estimates. Outside the boat, the same sea is dark, moving, unknowable. The navigator leans over the chart, one hand resting near the dividers. He follows a course line not with excitement, but with patience. The brass dividers open slightly, then close. Their points touch the paper. A distance is measured, a small notation is made. The page lifts at one corner in the gentle movement of air and then settles again. In the low light, the chart seems less like a tool and more like a quiet memory of the world above, flattened and folded into something the mind can hold. The navigator's pencil pauses. For a moment, he simply listens. He hears the control room breathing around him, the hum beneath the floor, the fan moving stale air, the soft voice of a man giving a reading, the distant movement of someone passing through the corridor, the small tick of metal adjusting to temperature and pressure. He lowers his eyes again and writes. History often remembers large movements on maps, but here at midnight, the map is only a page under a lamp, and history is only a tired man keeping his pencil sharp enough to mark the night clearly. Near the diving planes, another man keeps his hands ready. He feels the boat as much as he sees it. The level shifts slightly. The wheel moves. The vessel answers. Not quickly, not sharply, but with the slow grace of a heavy thing guided through water. He has learned that a submarine is not commanded only by force. It is listened to. It is balanced. It is coaxed. The boat has moods of weight and motion. It has preferences. It resists carelessness. It rewards steadiness. So he watches and listens and makes small corrections. Corrections so slight that an untrained observer might not notice them at all. A little pressure, a small turn, a pause. The level returns. The boat settles. The night continues. Forward, beyond the control room, the radio space glows faintly. It is a narrow compartment, filled with equipment, wires, dials, switches, paper, and the private stillness of listening. The radio operator sits with headphones over his ears. His shoulders are slightly rounded. One hand rests near a pencil. The other hovers close to a control but does not touch it yet. In his ears, the world arrives as hiss, faint tones, pauses, and long stretches of nothing. He's not chasing drama. He's not waiting for anything sudden. He's simply listening, because listening is his work, and at this hour work is done quietly. The radio room smells different from the control room. Warmer dust, electrical insulation, paper that has lived too long in damp air. Metal warmed from inside. A mug in the corner, a folded scrap tucked safely where it will not fall, a spare pencil tied with string. Everything is arranged to remain in place when the boat shifts. The operator adjusts one dial by the smallest degree. The hiss changes, then settles. He writes nothing, because there is nothing to write. And nothing to write is not a failure. It is peace, a quiet frequency, an uneventful minute, a night continuing without interruption. In another listening space, the hydrophone operator lowers his head. His headphones bring him not voices but water. The sea arrives as a broad, soft hush, a murmur without edges, a far-off texture. He listens beyond the boat's own body, beyond the pumps and fans and breathing metal, beyond the occasional footstep in the passageway. He listens into the dark water itself. At this hour there is only distance, only the layered silence of the sea, only the faint suggestion of movement carried through miles of cold Atlantic. The operator breathes slowly. He does not tense. He lets sound arrive. He lets sound leave. He lets the ocean be mostly empty. And the emptiness is calming. The boat drifts steadily on. For you, listening from far away, this underwater listening can become a soft image. Imagine sound becoming rounded by water. Imagine every sharp edge softened before it reaches you. Imagine the sea as a dark curtain drawn around every thought. Beyond that curtain, the world may still exist, but it is remote now, distant, muted, unimportant. Inside the boat there is only the next breath, the next quiet reading, the next small assurance that all remains steady. A warm light, a still gauge, a hand near a wheel, a cup cooling beside a logbook, a pencil resting on damp paper. The night deepens. The watch changes slowly. No one announces it loudly. There is no ceremony, only tired men exchanging places with the soft discipline of those who understand the value of sleep. One man arrives with his hair flattened from a bunk and his eyes still carrying the last traces of a dream. Another gives him the necessary words in a low voice. Course steady, depth steady, trim steady. Nothing unusual. The words are simple, and the simplicity is reassuring. The relieved man nods, stretches his fingers once and moves away from the instruments. He's already becoming less a watchman and more a body in search of rest. He passes the little galley, if such a small corner can be called a galley. There, cups, tins, cloths, and the memory of many meals are packed into careful order. A pot sits dark and warm. The scent of coffee is stronger here, mixed with bread, metal, preserved food, and the dampness that never fully leaves. A cloth hangs where it can dry a little, though it never dries completely. A shelf rail keeps mugs from sliding. A piece of bread has been wrapped and placed aside for someone who will need it later. There is no comfort here in the elegant sense, but there is a deep comfort in usefulness. A pot that is still warm, a cup that has not broken, a small portion saved, a light kept low. These things matter. The passageway aft is narrow. The tired man turns sideways without thinking. His shoulders know the shape of the boat. His hands know where the rails are. His feet know where the floor rises slightly and where a pipe narrows the way. A hanging coat brushes his sleeve. He does not mind. He moves past valves, labels, wires, stored provisions, and the soft shadows of men at rest. He has given his hours to the red light and the gauges. Now he will give himself to a bunk, not a private room, not a soft bed, only a narrow space, a blanket, a little warmth, and the permission to close his eyes. Back in the control room, the new watch settles into the rhythm. At first, the red light seems dim. The body is still waking. The mind is still halfway inside sleep. Then the instruments become clear. The hum becomes familiar. The needles become companions. One man touches the edge of the chart table with 2 fingers, as if greeting it. Another checks the trim. Another reads the air. Someone takes the cup that has been left for him. No one speaks more than necessary. The boat rewards quiet. The ocean rewards steadiness. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing, the new watch becomes part of the same ongoing night. A faint creak passes through the hull. It is not alarming. It is simply the language of pressure and temperature, the voice of metal accepting the deep water around it. Every vessel speaks. This one speaks in little knocks, small ticks, soft groans no louder than a sleeper turning beneath blankets. The men know these sounds. They know the difference between the ordinary and the unfamiliar. Tonight the sounds are ordinary. They say the boat is enclosed. They say the Atlantic is outside. They say the lamps are low, the instruments steady, the watch awake, and the sleepers protected for another little while. A drop of condensation gathers on a pipe overhead. It swells slowly. For a moment it holds the red light inside itself. Then it falls onto a cloth placed below for that purpose. The tiny sound vanishes almost at once. Moisture is everywhere in small ways. It beads on pipes. It softens paper. It makes wool heavier. It gives metal a faint sheen. It reminds every surface of the sea. And yet, even this becomes part of the calm. The boat is not dry. It is not spacious. It is not easy. But it is known. And what is known can become soothing. One crewman rests briefly on a folding stool, his back against the bulkhead. He closes his eyes but does not sleep. Not here, not while on duty. He only allows the darkness behind his eyelids to widen for a few breaths. With his eyes closed, the control room changes. The hum grows deeper. The pencil becomes a tiny scratching sound. The fan becomes a breath. A footstep becomes a ripple. A cup placed down becomes a small stone dropped into water. He opens his eyes again. Nothing has changed. The same gauges hold. The same red light glows. The same boat moves through the same dark. And in a place like this, nothing changing is a kind of peace. The ocean outside remains unseen. Perhaps the moon has passed behind a cloud. Perhaps the wind has shifted. Perhaps the surface has become rougher or smoother. Down here, those things arrive only as distant translations. A movement softened. A sound muted. A pressure held. The night inside the submarine is not the same as night above the sea. It is an interior night, a night of red light, of dark green metal, pale hands, black rubber, brass rims, folded charts, slow breaths, and faces appearing briefly before returning to shadow. Midnight here is not only an hour, it is a texture. The texture of low voices, the texture of warm cups, the texture of wool, the texture of waiting. The boat holds its depth, the needles hold their places, the watch holds its silence, and because everything holds, the mind begins to loosen, not carelessly, not completely, just enough. The same few sounds return again and again until they seem to rock thought itself. Breath, creak, pause, hum, breath, creak, pause. A hand moves, a page turns, a man exhales, the boat goes on, the night goes on, the submerged world goes on, wrapped in darkness, wrapped in water, wrapped in the steady patience of routine. As the first hour below the surface becomes the next, the control room grows more familiar. At the beginning of a watch, every object seems separate. The gauges, the pipes, the wheels, the lamp, the chart, the logbook, the faces. But after a while, the room becomes one complete thing, one enclosed chamber of attention. Each object belongs to all the others. The depth gauge belongs to the hand near the plane wheel. The pencil belongs to the logbook belongs to the clock belongs to the watch belongs to the boat, and the boat belongs for now to the dark Atlantic. The men have learned to move slowly not because they are weak or weary, but because slowness is efficient in a narrow space. A sudden turn bumps a shoulder, a careless elbow touches a lever, a loud word wakes someone who needs sleep. So the submarine teaches gentleness, it teaches economy, it teaches the body to become smaller and more aware. A man reaches for a valve and pauses just before his sleeve brushes the man beside him. He waits one breath, then moves. The small courtesy is unnoticed, and because it is unnoticed, it is complete. Many peaceful things are like that. A submarine at night is full of hidden gestures of care. A cup is moved away from an edge. A blanket is folded tighter so it does not block a path. A sleeping man's boot is nudged inward so another can pass. A lamp is turned a fraction lower. The door is caught before it knocks. No one calls these things kindness. They are too practical for that. But kindness can be practical. In a place where every inch is shared, attention becomes a way of letting others rest. At the chart table, the navigator makes another note. Then he holds the pencil between his fingers and lets his eyes settle on the map. There are no grand declarations there, only the quiet arithmetic of position and time. A line crosses an empty space, a small circle marks an estimate, a correction waits in the margin. The ocean on the chart is pale and still, unlike the ocean outside, yet both oceans are real. One carries the boat, the other carries the mind. Between them, the navigator keeps the night from becoming shapeless. The dim light makes the pencils and rulers seem older than they are. Objects age quickly in such air, labels soften, leather darkens, metal shines where hands have touched it, edges dull. The boat itself becomes a record of touch. Every rail has been gripped, every hatch wheel has been turned, every curtain has been drawn by tired hands, every corner has held someone's waiting. History, in a place like this, is not only written in documents or remembered in great events, it is worn into surfaces by routine. The radio operator receives almost nothing, and almost nothing can be peaceful. The faint hiss in his ears remains steady, like rain heard from another room. He adjusts a dial so slightly that the movement barely exists. The glow from the equipment rests on his knuckles. His face is calm, not because he is careless, but because he has accepted the discipline of waiting. Waiting has a posture. Waiting has a breath. Waiting has a way of making minutes stretch and soften, until time is no longer a ladder, but a corridor with low lights placed along it. When he lifts one side of the headphones for a moment, the boat returns around him. Without the hiss, he hears the deeper hum of machinery, a muted footstep in the passage, a distant clink from the galley, the small creak of the hull. Then he replaces the headphone, and the outside world narrows again to signal and silence. In this way, he lives between two quiets, the quiet of the boat, the quiet of distance. Neither is empty, both are full of texture, both are full of listening. The hydrophone operator is held in his own pocket of attention. He knows that water carries sound differently from air. It stretches it, softens it, bends it through layers of temperature and depth. At this hour, what he hears is mostly the ocean itself, broad and indistinct, a velvet hush around the hull. Sometimes there is the faint whisper of the submarine's own motion, a brushed sound, as if the boat were passing through dark cloth. He listens without tightening his body. He lets the sound come. He lets it pass. He writes nothing because there is nothing to report. And nothing to report is received like a blessing. In the control room, a younger crewman watches an older one make a tiny adjustment. The younger man tries to understand the instinct behind it. The older man does not explain immediately. He watches the instrument settle, then gives a small nod. Later, perhaps, he will say a few words. Not many. Experience in such places is rarely given as a speech. It is passed through examples, through corrected hands, through quiet looks, through the repetition of tasks until unease becomes competence, and competence becomes calm. The young man breathes slowly and stores the moment somewhere inside himself. The submarine continues through water no one sees. Its path is not dramatic. It is only a line of movement through darkness. Outside, there may be plankton turning faintly in the disturbed water. There may be fish that feel only pressure passing and then forget it. There may be deep currents older than human memory, moving in slow layers across the Atlantic. The boat is small in that vastness, but inside it, smallness becomes enclosure. Enclosure becomes warmth. Warmth becomes trust, and trust, repeated long enough, becomes sleep. A clock ticks, though its ticking is almost swallowed by the machinery. The hands move with no interest in the men who watch them. Yet everyone aboard understands the clock. It divides discomfort into pieces. It gives shape to duty. It promises that a watch will end, that a meal will come, that a bunk will become available. That morning, even unseen, will arrive somewhere above the water. Beneath the sea, time is artificial and essential. It is made of dials, bells, notes, rotations, and habits. It is made of men agreeing silently to move through the hours together. In the little galley, bread is cut with care. The knife does not strike the board loudly. The man cutting it has learned how to do even this quietly. He wraps part of it in cloth and leaves it where someone coming off watch will find it. There may be a small portion from a tin, not enough to impress anyone, but enough to mark the hour. Food on a submarine is not a feast. It is a reminder. It says the body still matters. It says warmth still matters. It says that even in a steel tube beneath the Atlantic, ordinary human needs continue patiently. A kettle or pot gives off low heat. The coffee has darkened past politeness. The cups are chipped. The spoons are few. The shelf has a rail to keep things from sliding when the boat shifts. A cloth nearby never completely dries. The whole corner seems too small to serve so many men, and yet it does. It serves them by existing, by offering something warm, by keeping the idea of a kitchen alive in a place where walls curve, pipes sweat, and the sea is never far away. When a cup is carried back to the control room, it leaves a faint thread of steam in the passage. The steam twists once in the red light and disappears. The man who receives it nods without looking away from his instruments. His hand closes around the cup and warmth seeps into his fingers. That warmth is simple, but simple things grow larger at night. A warm cup, a dry sock, a folded blanket, a familiar voice kept low, a gauge holding steady. These are not small things when the world has narrowed to steel, water, darkness, and time. The off-duty men sleep in fragments, and the men on watch protect those fragments as best they can. Sleep here does not always arrive like a clean curtain. It comes in pieces, in shallow pools, in sudden heaviness behind the eyes. It comes while boots are still on, while a coat is half folded, while someone nearby whispers or turns. It comes because the body knows it must take rest when rest is offered. The control room understands this. It keeps its voice low. It lets the tired go. The vessel itself seems to encourage drowsiness once the routines are steady. The motion is small, not enough to unsettle, only enough to remind the body that it is being carried. The hum is constant, not loud, only present, like distant weather. The warmth is uneven, but real. The shadows are deep but familiar. Even the confinement, which might seem hard in daylight, becomes something else at midnight. It becomes a boundary. It becomes the wall of a cocoon. It says the world is outside, and for now, you are inside. For now, there is nothing to solve beyond the next breath. A hand rests on a valve wheel worn smooth at the outer edge. The fingers trace the curve once, not from nervousness, but from habit. The red light turns the nails dark. Faint vibration moves through the metal. It is a direct connection to the boat's body. And because the man has worked here long enough, that vibration tells him more than words would. It says the pumps are steady. It says the motion is even. It says the vessel continues in its submerged line. He releases the wheel. The rhythm remains. In the background, a man coughs once into a cloth softly, apologetically. Another glances over, then looks away. No one comments. Bodies make sounds, boats make sounds, nights make sounds. The art is not to eliminate them, but to let them settle. The cough disappears into the hum disappears into the hull disappears into the water, and the water, endless and dark, carries everything without hurry. The red lamps preserve the night. Under them, the control room becomes almost dreamlike. Edges soften. A chart seems to float. A face appears and vanishes. Steam rises from a cup like a small ghost. The brass rim of a gauge glows and fades as someone passes before it. The shadows are not empty. They are layered with blankets, bags, spare parts, folded coats, and the patient clutter of human life compressed into steel. A submarine has no true silence. Even when the engines are low, even when the men are still, even when no one speaks, there is always something. Air through a vent, water along the hull, the slow contraction of metal, the tiny complaint of wood or leather, the living breath of those asleep nearby. But because the sounds are continuous, because they return again and again, they become a kind of silence, a filled silence, a protected silence. The kind of silence that invites the listener not to wait for the next thing, but to sink into what is already here. And now, as the night deepens, attention drifts toward the places where tired men go. The control room remains awake. It must. Its lamps remain low and red. Its gauges remain patient. Its watch remains attentive. But beyond it, through the narrow passageways, past the galley and stored supplies, past damp coats and softly moving shadows, there are bunks stacked close together, blankets folded and unfolded, boots tucked beneath narrow ledges, and men who have given themselves permission to disappear for a little while into sleep. The sleeping quarters are not separate from the life of the boat. They are woven into it. There is no grand doorway between duty and rest. No quiet hallway leading to private rooms. No true bedroom in the sense that people on land understand the word. There are bunks fitted into available spaces, bunks arranged wherever the boat has allowed them, bunks close to passageways, close to pipes, close to lockers, close to the steady hum that never leaves. And yet, at this hour, those bunks become precious. They become the softest idea aboard. They become the place where the body is allowed to stop holding itself upright. A man coming off watch reaches his bunk slowly, already half asleep in his movements. He does not undress in any leisurely way. There is no room for that. He loosens what must be loosened, removes what is too wet or too restrictive, folds what must not be lost, and slides into the narrow space with the practiced care of someone entering a shelf. The blanket is heavy, not luxurious, but heavy in the way sleep sometimes wants heaviness. It presses down gently across his shoulder and hip. It smells of wool, metal, salt, and the faint human warmth of whoever slept there before. On a submarine, a bunk is not always one man's alone. Space is too scarce for such generosity. Rest is arranged around duty, and duty moves in shifts, so warmth is shared indirectly, through blankets, mattresses, and the lingering shape of another body. This could seem strange on land, but here it becomes ordinary. A warm bunk is better than a cold one. A familiar blanket is better than none. The body does not philosophize when it is tired. It accepts the narrow mattress, the low ceiling, the soft dark inches above the face, and begins, slowly, to let go. The sleeping area breathes differently from the control room. There are fewer purposeful movements and more small involuntary sounds. A sleeper turning, fabric rubbing against wood or metal, a slow exhale. A boot nudged lightly beneath a bunk. The faint creak of a strap. Someone murmurs a word from a dream and then returns to silence. Someone else lies awake, not troubled, simply listening, waiting for sleep to finish its slow approach. The boat rocks almost imperceptibly, and the bunks receive that motion. passing it into the bodies inside them until the men seem less like they are lying still and more like they are being carried. The blankets are rough, but in the dark, roughness can become comforting. Their weight is known, their edges are known. A hand finds a fold and pulls it closer under the chin. The air near the bunk is warm from breathing and closed space. It carries the smell of wool, socks, old soap, skin, paper, and a trace of coffee drifting from farther aft. No scent is clean in the pure sense, but each belongs. Each says this is the place where tiredness is kept. This is the place where the body returns. This is the place where men become quiet shapes under blankets, while the boat continues its long submerged passage. Above one bunk, a small personal item has been tucked where it will not fall. Perhaps a photograph, perhaps a folded letter, perhaps a scrap of paper with an address written carefully on it. The details are difficult to see in the low light, and that is fitting. The private lives of the men remain mostly private, even here where space is shared. A man can have very little room, and still have an inner country no one else enters. He can close his eyes in a bunk barely wider than his shoulders, and still travel, in thought, to a kitchen, a street, a winter field, a mother's voice, a child's hand, a quiet room remembered from before the war. But the story does not need to enter those memories too sharply. For sleep, it is enough to know they exist, soft and distant, like lights seen across water. The man in the bunk lets them come and go. He does not hold them tightly. He lets the boat's rhythm cover them. The hum beneath the mattress becomes the hum beneath thought. The occasional creak of the hull becomes the creak of an old house in wind. The soft breath of another sleeper becomes part of his own breathing. He is still beneath the Atlantic, yes. But in the protected dark of exhaustion, the mind makes many rooms. In one of those rooms there is rain on a roof far away. In another, there is a kitchen table with a lamp burning low. In another, there is a lane bordered by dark hedges and the smell of wet earth after evening rain. The man does not choose these pictures. They arrive gently and fade gently. They come because the body is tired and the mind is no longer guarding every doorway. The submarine rocks him very slightly, not like a cradle exactly, but close enough that the body understands the suggestion. Rest now, only rest. For a while, there is nothing else required. A narrow curtain, if there is one, hangs partly drawn beside the bunk. It does not give true privacy. Nothing on the boat gives true privacy. But it gives the idea of privacy, and at midnight the idea is enough. The fabric moves a little when someone passes in the corridor. A thin stripe of dim light crosses the blanket, touches the sleeper's sleeve, and disappears. The sleeper does not wake fully. He only turns his face a little deeper into the shadow and lets the warmth gather again beneath the wool. Somewhere nearby, another man lies awake on his back, one arm folded across his chest, listening because sleep has not quite reached him yet. He is not worried. He's only waiting. Waiting for sleep is different from waiting for an order, or a reading, or a signal. It is softer. It has no sharp edge. He counts sounds without meaning to. The fan, the hull, a distant cup, a valve, a breath, a pause, the fan again, the hull again, the boat again. He loses the count and begins again, not as a task, but as a way to let thought loosen its grip. The sounds are predictable enough to become soothing. They arrive, they fade, they return. They make a circle around him, and inside that circle his thoughts have less room to wander. Inside that circle his body grows heavier. Inside that circle his eyes remain closed. The bunk above him shifts as another sleeper changes position. The mattress gives a small creak. A blanket edge slides. Then stillness returns. No one apologizes. No one needs to. The sleeping quarters are a shared instrument, and everyone makes some small sound inside it. A breath, a cough, a turn, a sigh, a whispered dream. To live here is to become tolerant of breathing, tolerant of movement, tolerant of the proof that other bodies are close by. This tolerance is one of the quiet disciplines of submarine life. It allows sleep to survive where space is scarce. The passage outside remains active in a muted way. The boat is never entirely asleep. Men still move between duties. Watches still change. The vessel still requires hands, eyes, and patience. But the passage has a bedtime voice now. Boots are placed carefully. Metal is touched rather than struck. A whispered phrase is kept low. A man ducks his head under a pipe and turns his shoulder so that his coat does not brush a sleeping face. The bunks are not silent, but they are respected. In this enclosed world, rest is a resource as real as air, fuel, food, or the charge held quietly in the batteries. One man dreams of the surface without seeing it clearly. In the dream, there is only grey water and a gull that may not belong to the Atlantic at all. Then the dream changes. The gull becomes the fan. The water becomes the blanket. The horizon becomes the edge of the bunk above him, and he sinks deeper. Sleep aboard the boat has this way of blending worlds. The real sounds do not stop at the edge of dreaming. They enter gently. They become something else. A valve becomes a distant gate. A footstep becomes rain on a roof. The hum of machinery becomes wind in trees. The submarine continues, and the dream continues with it. The air grows warmer inside the bunk after a while. Warmth collects under the blanket, beneath the shoulder, behind the knees, along the chest. The sleeper's breathing slows. His jaw loosens. The hand that had been gripping the blanket opens, finger by finger, without his knowing. This is one of the quietest moments aboard any vessel. Not the closing of a hatch, not the marking of a chart, not the turning of a valve, but the moment when a tired person stops resisting sleep. There is no announcement, there is only surrender. Simple, human, complete. In the dimness, the bunks resemble shelves of shadow and breath. A pale forehead here, a dark sleeve there, a socked foot partly visible, a folded coat used as a pillow. The arrangement is cramped, but at night the mind softens the cramped edges. The low ceiling becomes shelter. The narrowness becomes containment. The closeness of others becomes proof that one is not alone. The whole compartment becomes a cocoon inside a cocoon. Men sleeping inside the boat held inside the sea covered by night, the night covered by clouds. And above it all, unseen stars continuing in their silent courses. A small lamp near the passage gives just enough light for movement, not enough to wake the room. Its glow rests on the corners of blankets, on the rim of a tin cup, on the worn edge of a locker, on the curve of a pipe beaded faintly with moisture. Everything is practical. Everything has been used, and yet the low light gives each object gentleness. Even a pair of boots becomes peaceful when placed carefully beneath a bunk. Even a hanging belt becomes peaceful when it sways only a little with the boat's motion. Even the metal walls, close and dark, seem less severe when they hold warmth. For the listener, this is a place to drift. You do not need to know every technical part of the submarine. You do not need to follow every duty. You do not need to remember the names of the rooms or the exact purpose of every instrument. It is enough to imagine the slow interior night, the red lights farther away. The sleeping quarters here, the heavy blanket, the soft movement, the steady hum beneath everything. It is enough to imagine that the world above has become distant and unimportant, that the surface wind cannot reach you, that the large concerns of daylight have been folded away like a coat on a hook. The men sleep because they must, but also because the body is wise. It accepts rhythm, it accepts darkness, it accepts repetition. The submarine gives all three: rhythm in the hum, darkness in the corners, repetition in the watch, the breath, the creak, the slight sway. Again and again the same sounds return. Again and again the boat holds. Again and again the blanket rises and falls with a sleeping chest. Nothing needs to be hurried. Nothing needs to be finished in this moment. The vessel continues, and the sleepers continue with it. A few compartments away, the control room remains awake, but its wakefulness feels protective rather than intrusive. The men there keep the boat steady so the men here can rest. The men here rest so they can later keep the boat steady. This exchange continues through the night, simple and circular. Duty becomes rest. Rest becomes duty. The boat lives by that rhythm. It is not glamorous. It is not dramatic. It is the oldest pattern of shared work. Some watch while others sleep. Later the sleepers rise and take their turn. The bunk canvas holds the warmth of the body. Beneath it the frame is firm, perhaps too firm, but the tired body does not object for long. It shapes itself to what is available. A shoulder finds a hollow. A knee bends slightly. The head turns toward the darker side. The blanket is pulled once more. After that, stillness. Not perfect stillness, because the boat moves. Not silence, because the boat breathes, but a living stillness. a carried stillness. The stillness of a person asleep inside a moving world. Somewhere a man begins to snore softly. The sound is light at first, almost uncertain. Then it gathers a little more weight. Another sleeper shifts. The snore catches, fades, returns more gently. These sounds might seem ordinary in another place, perhaps even comic, but here they belong to the warmth of human presence. They remind the room that the crew are not only roles, not only watchmen, operators, engineers, cooks, and navigators. They are bodies needing air, warmth, food, rest. In sleep, rank and duty soften. A sleeping man is simply a man, carried for a while by others. The boat moves through a layer of water that feels calmer than the surface. The men cannot see that water, but they can feel its steadiness in the way the vessel holds itself. The rolling of the surface has faded. The motion now is deeper, slower, more muted. It is like being rocked from very far away. The bunks accept this deeper motion beautifully. It enters the blankets. It enters the bones. It says, slowly and steadily, you are being carried. Slowly and steadily, the night is passing. Slowly and steadily, sleep may come. A folded letter rests in a pocket near one of the bunks. Its paper is soft from being opened many times. The words inside are not read tonight. They do not need to be. Their existence is enough. They wait in the dark, carrying a voice from far away. Many things wait aboard a submarine. Letters, meals, watches, surfacing, morning, return, news, sleep. Waiting is the background of everything. But in the sleeping quarters, waiting becomes softer. It is not a demand. It is a blanket over time. Another man, not yet asleep, listens to the breathing around him and lets his own breathing join it. He inhales slowly through the nose, feeling the warm, close air. He exhales, and the exhale disappears into the shared darkness. Again. Inhale, exhale. The boat hums. Again. Inhale, exhale. The hull creaks lightly. Again. Inhale, exhale. A distant footstep passes and fades. Soon he no longer counts. Soon the breath counts itself. Soon the body is less a separate thing and more part of the whole submerged rhythm. This is the sleeping heart of the boat. Not quiet in the perfect sense, not comfortable in the luxurious sense, not private in the ordinary sense, but safe enough for rest because everyone has accepted the terms of the night. The steel walls hold, the watch continues, the ocean remains outside, the blanket remains heavy, the bunk remains narrow, the breath remains slow. And in that acceptance, a kind of peace becomes possible. Not the peace of open fields, not the peace of bright rooms, but the peace of endurance, closeness, warmth, and rhythm. The story slows here because sleep asks for slowness. It asks not to be pulled forward too quickly. It asks for the same images to return with small differences, like waves touching a shore at night. The bunk, the blanket, the hum, the red light beyond the passage, the deep water outside, the hand opening in sleep, the breath slowing, the boat continuing. These images do not need to surprise you. They only need to hold you. They only need to become familiar enough that your own thoughts may rest beside them. In the control room, someone writes another line. In the sleeping quarters, someone turns over. In the galley, the coffee darkens. In the radio room, the hiss continues. Outside, the Atlantic carries the hull without expression. All of it belongs to the same night. All of it moves at the same unhurried pace. The war, the world, the maps, the flags, the speeches, the distance between nations, all of that is far away from this exact breath. Here, now, there is only a vessel, a watch, a sleeping crew, and the low rhythmic hush of being submerged. The quarters darken further as the mind adjusts. What seemed visible becomes less important. What seemed cramped becomes less sharp. The body does not require much from the eyes now. It listens instead. It feels instead. It lets the blanket give weight, and the boat give rhythm. A man who had been almost awake becomes almost asleep. Then the distinction fades. He drifts without marking the crossing. One thought begins, but never finishes. One image rises, then dissolves. The submarine carries him through both, steady and unseen. There is no need to imagine danger here. This story chooses the quiet hours. It chooses the routine that fills most of any long night. It chooses the unseen acts that allow people to continue. Checking, warming, folding, listening, sleeping. The submarine, often remembered for harsher things, can also be remembered as a place where men waited in low light, where blankets were pulled to tired shoulders, where coffee steamed in chipped cups, where the sea pressed outside and ordinary human calm survived inside. History is made of such hours too, and so the sleeping quarters remain, a narrow chamber of rest beneath the Atlantic. The bunks hold their sleepers. The sleepers hold their dreams. The dreams hold pieces of land, home, memory, and sky. The boat holds all of them, and the ocean holds the boat. Layer within layer, breath within breath, night within night. Nothing sudden, nothing sharp. Only the slow folding of time, the steady passage of water, and the deepening quiet that invites the listener to drift lower, softer, and further away from the bright surface of waking thought. Farther aft, beyond the bunks and the folded blankets, beyond the passage where men move with careful shoulders, the engine spaces hold another kind of night. It is warmer there, denser, more metallic, filled with the memory of power even when power has been reduced to a low, restrained murmur. The engines are not loud now. They are not demanding attention with force. They're breathing in their lower register, heavy and patient, sending vibration through the frames of the vessel like an underground stream running beneath every compartment. The men who tend these spaces know the boat through heat, smell, pressure, and touch. They know when a sound belongs. They know when it does not. They know the difference between ordinary warmth and heat that asks to be watched, between oil doing its work and oil somewhere it should not be, between a normal vibration and a note that has changed by the smallest degree. At midnight, their work is not dramatic. It is a slow conversation with machinery, carried out in glances, careful hands, and quiet adjustments. A mechanic stands with one hand near a pipe, not gripping it, only feeling the temperature through the back of his fingers. His face is marked by low light. His cheekbones are shadowed. His eyes are calm and slightly narrowed. Around him, the engine space is crowded with metal shapes that seem almost to sleep themselves. Pipes, valves, cylinders, casings, brackets, belts, narrow walkways, warm surfaces, dark corners. A person must move there with the care of someone passing through a room full of sleeping animals. Nothing is decorative. Everything has a reason. Everything has a sound. The air smells of diesel, warm oil, steel, and cloth darkened by work. It is not the smell of comfort as people on land might name comfort, and yet, to the men who work here, it can become reassuring because it is familiar. A familiar smell says the world is still arranged as it was before. A familiar hum says the boat is still itself. A familiar vibration says the unseen parts continue their turning, their pumping, their patient carrying of the vessel through the black water. A small tool lies on a folded rag. Someone placed it there deliberately so it would not slide, so it would not ring against the metal, so it would not wake a man beyond the bulkhead or disturb the quiet discipline of the night. The rag is stained but clean enough for its purpose. The tool catches a line of reddish light and then loses it as a shadow moves. A hand returns it to its place. The gesture is minor, almost invisible, and yet the boat depends on such gestures, thousands of them, repeated across hours, repeated across voyages, repeated until care becomes instinct. The engine room has its own rhythm, slower and calmer than the imagination might expect. People often think of machinery as restless, but machinery in good order can be calming. It turns because it must turn. It moves because each part knows where it belongs. It gives a low, predictable sound because the men have listened to it, tended it, tightened it, cleaned it, watched it, and learned its moods. Tonight, there is nothing in the rhythm that asks for alarm. The mechanic listens, the engine answers, the boat continues. Another man notes a reading. Not hurriedly, not with any show of importance. He leans close enough to see in the muted light, records the number, and pauses. His pencil leaves a faint mark on the paper. The paper rests on a small board that has been used many times before. The corners are worn. The surface has small dents where previous notes were written with too much pressure. The man blows softly across the page, not because it is needed, but because the habit has followed him from other nights. Then he tucks the pencil away. In these spaces, warmth gathers. It gathers under collars and beneath caps. It gathers at the back of the neck, it gathers in the palms. The air does not move freely. It travels through vents and gaps around equipment, past hanging cloths, along the narrow ways left for bodies to pass. It carries oil, heat, breath, and the faint dampness of the sea. A man wipes his forehead with a sleeve already marked by work. He does not complain. He has known this heat before. He knows that every part of the boat has its own weather. The deck had cold wind. The control room has red air. The bunks have wool and breath. The engine spaces have warmth, oil, and patience. Above, beyond layers of steel, the Atlantic is cold. Very cold. It presses itself around the hull without caring about the warmth inside. That contrast is strange and comforting. A warm vessel moving through cold darkness, a small human shelter held within an enormous sea. The mechanic thinks of this only briefly, if he thinks of it at all. Perhaps he simply feels the warmth around him and knows, without words, that the boat is a kind of lantern. Not bright, not visible to the world, but glowing inwardly, with lamps, bodies, instruments, tea, and the quiet heat of engines. A metal panel is checked, a fastening is touched, a gauge is read, a valve is turned a fraction. The hand does not force it. The hand knows the valve's resistance, knows where it begins, knows where it should stop. The motion is as familiar as closing a door at home, or lifting a kettle, or folding a blanket. Inside the submarine, many acts of survival become domestic in their repetition. A pipe is checked the way a stove might be checked. A gauge is read the way a clock might be read. A tool is returned the way a cup might be placed back on a shelf. War, when kept in the background of this story, becomes less a spectacle than a condition surrounding ordinary routine. The men do not speak of great things now. They speak of small things. A reading, a temperature, a cup, a shift, a sleeping man who should not be disturbed. A bit of cloth needed near a drip. The world beyond the hull is too large for this hour. The boat itself is enough. The engine room gives off a low pulse that travels forward through the vessel. By the time that vibration reaches the bunks, it has softened. By the time it reaches the control room, it has become part of the floor. By the time it reaches the radio operator's chair, it is no longer noticed unless it changes. And because it does not change, it becomes a reassurance, a steady thing, a background promise, a lullaby made not by intention but by machinery doing its work well. The mechanic places his palm briefly against a surface and then withdraws it. He nods to another man. The nod is small. No words are needed. The message is clear enough. All is as expected. All continues. All holds. The other man nods back, then moves carefully past him, turning sideways through the narrow space. Their sleeves brush only slightly. The engine hum does not alter. The boat continues beneath the Atlantic, and in the engine room the night is kept warm by patience. Forward again, in the little galley the coffee has grown darker. A cup is rinsed with a small amount of water, never more than needed. Another cup waits upside down. Bread is wrapped, a tin is closed, a cloth is folded and then unfolded again because the first fold would not let it dry. There is a faint smell of old onions, preserved meat, strong tea, coffee, damp wood and metal. No one would call the galley beautiful, and yet at night, with the lamp low and the rest of the boat breathing around it, even this small corner has tenderness. The man there moves with quiet efficiency. He knows where everything is because there is no room not to know. A spoon has its place, a knife has its place, a tin opener has its place, mugs have their place behind the little rail, a kettle has its place, a cloth hangs where it can be reached in darkness. Small order matters in small rooms. The whole boat depends on such order. A missing tool, a misplaced cup, a careless spill, a loud clatter, any of these would disturb more than the object itself. So the galley is kept with the same care as the chart table, only in a different language. The language of warmth, the language of food, the language of quiet hands. A man appears in the galley entrance, not fully entering because there is not much room to enter. He whispers a request. The cook, or the man acting as cook for this stretch of the night, nods and pours a little tea. The tea is not delicate, it is strong and practical. The cup is warm, a small piece of bread is added, perhaps a smear of something preserved, perhaps nothing at all. The exchange lasts only a few seconds. Cup, bread, nod, return. But such exchanges hold the night together. They are the small bridges between duty and rest, Between cold thoughts and warm hands, between one tired man and another, the cup moves through the passageway, past a hanging coat, past a pipe that drips slowly, past a low lamp, past a man asleep with one arm fallen outside his blanket, past the radio room where the operator sits in the soft glow of his instruments, past the chart table where the navigator has bent once more over the paper sea. The tea arrives in the control room and is received with both hands. For a moment, the man holding it looks down into the dark surface. A little steam touches his face. He breathes it in. Then he returns his eyes to the gauge. The cup remains there, warming his fingers. The boat continues its long, quiet passage. There is a strange gentleness in objects at night. A pencil, a cup, a folded rag, a small lamp, a map, a blanket, a boot, a tin plate. By daylight, or in the urgency of work, they are only tools, but at midnight they become companions. They mark the human scale of the submarine. They remind the listener that history was not only made of commands and dates, but of things held in hands, of cups passed quietly, of blankets tugged over shoulders, of letters folded and unfolded, of maps smoothed under low light, of lamps that kept darkness from becoming complete. In the radio room, the operator shifts in his seat. The chair gives a small creak. He pauses, listening to the sound of his own chair as if it came from somewhere else. Then he smiles faintly, not with amusement exactly, but with tired recognition. Even a chair can have a voice in such a place. Everything aboard speaks eventually: the pipes, the lockers, the bunks, the door frames, the straps, the cups, the hull, the engines, the sea. And after enough nights, a man learns the household language of the boat. He lowers his head again. The hiss resumes its soft place in his ears. A faint tone appears, then fades. Nothing important. Nothing urgent. He writes no message. He only listens. Listening is one of the deepest forms of waiting. It gives the body something to do while time passes slowly. It gives the mind a narrow path to walk. Here at midnight in the dim room, the operator walks that path without moving. His fingers rest near the pencil. His shoulders soften by a fraction. His breathing falls into time with the low vibration through the walls. Outside, the Atlantic carries sound in its own secret way. Inside, the radio carries distance in another. The man sits between the two, calm and patient, a listener inside a listening vessel. In the hydrophone space, the sea remains broad and muted. The operator hears more silence than sound, but silence at sea is never completely empty. It has pressure in it. It has space in it. It has the suggestion of miles. He adjusts the cups over his ears and closes his eyes. Not to sleep, only to listen more clearly. When the eyes close, the body begins to imagine distance. The water around the hull seems wider. The metal around him seems closer. The hum behind him seems deeper. He lets all of it exist without needing to change it. There is nothing to report. The phrase itself is calming. Nothing to report. Nothing unusual. Nothing requiring alarm. Only the sea. Only the boat. Only the long, patient dark. He opens his eyes and writes a small mark anyway. Not a message, not a warning, only a note that the watch continues. The pencil rests again. The headphones remain. The ocean hushes around them. Somewhere in the sleeping quarters, a man wakes briefly without knowing why. His eyes open to darkness. For a moment, he does not remember whether he has slept 10 minutes or 2 hours. Time in a submarine can become soft, especially when no sunlight enters to divide it. He listens. The hum is steady. The nearby breathing is steady. The boat moves gently. No one is calling his name. No hand touches his shoulder. No duty has come yet. So he lets his eyes close again. The relief is immediate and quiet. Not the relief of escape. Only the relief of not being needed for a little longer. He turns his face toward the warm side of the blanket. The darkness receives him again. This second falling asleep is often deeper than the first. The body, having checked the world and found it unchanged, trusts more fully. The mind releases the small question that opened the eyes. The bunk seems warmer. The hum seems lower. The breath comes more slowly. The sleeping man does not know that a cup is being carried in the control room, or that the hydrophone operator has written a small mark, or that the mechanic aft has touched a pipe and nodded. He does not need to know. The beauty of a watch is that someone else holds the waking world for you. For a while, you're allowed to drift. The same is true for you, listening now. You do not need to hold the whole story. You do not need to keep track of every compartment. You do not need to remember which man is where. Let the details pass. Let the warm cup pass. Let the red light pass. Let the engine room pass. Let the sleeping quarters pass. Let the ocean pass. The story is not a puzzle. It is a slow corridor of images. You may walk down it, or you may pause, or you may fall asleep halfway through and let the corridor continue without you. The night will not mind. The submarine does not hurry because it has nowhere to hurry in this story. Its purpose here is not to arrive quickly. Its purpose here is to hold a mood, a long, dark, steady mood. The vessel moves beneath the Atlantic like a thought moving beneath speech, mostly unseen, mostly unheard, but present, patient, carrying the weight of its own small world. Inside, the crew live hour by hour, and hour by hour the night becomes less like a line and more like a circle. Watch, cup, gauge, blanket, breath, pipe, chart, hum, watch again. In the engine room, the heat remains. A man sits for a moment on a small edge allowed by the machinery, not truly resting, only taking weight off his feet. He leans forward with his elbows near his knees and listens to the engines as if listening to a familiar animal breathe in its sleep. There is trust in the sound. Not blind trust, not careless trust. Earned trust. Trust made of maintenance, habit, attention, and many previous nights when the same sound meant the same thing. He closes his eyes for 2 breaths, only 2. Then he opens them. The same metal, the same warmth, the same low note. The vessel continues. He stands again. No one has seen the small rest except perhaps another mechanic who says nothing because he understands. A submarine is full of these brief rests. A shoulder against a wall, a hand around a warm mug, a closed eye in a red-lit room, a breath taken beside a pipe, a moment seated before the next task. Rest does not always look like sleep. Sometimes it is only the body finding one small place to soften. The war outside may divide the world into nations, routes, orders, and dangers, but inside the boat the body knows simpler categories. Warm, cold, tired, fed, awake, asleep, needed, not needed yet. These categories guide the night more intimately than any map. In the galley, the lamp flickers once, then steadies. The man there looks at it automatically. No concern, only habit. He adjusts the position of a cup. He wraps the bread more tightly. He wipes a surface already clean enough. There is a quiet dignity in doing small work well when no one is watching. The submarine contains many such dignities. The radio operator not writing a message because there is none. The mechanic returning a tool exactly where it belongs. The watchman lowering his voice near the bunks. The cook saving a portion for a man coming off duty. The navigator making one careful mark instead of a careless one. None of these things are remembered in monuments, but without them, no long night would pass safely. The control room receives another small report. It is spoken softly. It changes nothing. That, too, is good. The watchman repeats the information in a low voice, more to confirm the routine than because anyone needs drama. The words settle into the room and disappear. A man near the chart table takes off his cap, runs one hand through flattened hair and puts it back on. Another shifts his weight from one foot to the other. Someone yawns without opening his mouth fully. The yawn passes from him like a shadow. For a moment, another man almost catches it. Then both return to stillness. The night is not empty. It is full of almost events, almost sleep, almost speech, almost memory, almost movement. A hand almost reaches for a cup, then waits. A question almost forms, then fades, because the answer is already known. A thought almost turns toward home, then softens before it becomes too sharp. This is part of the calm. The story does not need large happenings. It needs the gentler truth of quiet hours. Most of life, even in wartime, is made of waiting for the next necessary thing. And sometimes, when nothing is immediately necessary, the soul finds room to breathe. Down in the sleeping quarters, one man now sleeps deeply enough that the sound of the boat has become indistinguishable from sleep itself. If the hum stopped, perhaps he would wake, but because it continues, he stays under. The steady sound is not preventing rest, it is supporting it, like rain, like wind, like distant wheels on rails, like a river beyond a window. The body is often less disturbed by sound than by change, and here the sounds do not change, they repeat. They hold. They become a flaw beneath dreams. Another sleeper has turned toward the wall. His breath warms a small patch of metal or wood near his face. He may dream now of a room on land. He may dream of nothing. He may dream of walking through a town at dusk with blackout curtains already drawn in every window, and a woman carrying a basket under one arm, and a bicycle leaning against a wall, and the smell of coal smoke in the air. Or perhaps he dreams only of water. Not dangerous water, only water moving slowly in darkness. The dream does not need to be clear. Sleep does not explain itself. It only gathers what the day has left behind and makes a softer shape from it. A quiet voice in the passage says someone's name, not the sleeper's name. Another man rises from a bunk farther down. His shift has come. He sits up slowly, careful not to hit his head. For a moment he remains there, between sleep and duty, hands resting on the edge of the mattress, eyes lowered, listening to the boat. Then he reaches for his boots. He pulls them on with the least sound possible. He folds the blanket back for the next man, because warmth should not be wasted. He checks his pocket for what he needs, a small notebook, a pencil, a cloth, nothing more. When he enters the passage, he's still carrying sleep around him like a shadow, but with each step toward the control room, the shadow thins. The red light finds his face. The hum rises through his boots. The instruments wait. He rubs one eye with the heel of his hand, then lets the hand fall. He is awake enough. Awake enough is sometimes all the night requires at first. The man he will relieve gives the quiet report. Depth. Coarse, trim, all steady, nothing unusual. The new man nods. The old one nods back. A transfer of wakefulness has taken place. No ceremony, no pride, only continuity. The relieved man moves away with the tired care of someone whose body has already imagined the bunk. The newly awake man stands in his place. The circle turns. The vessel continues. This is how the night survives itself. Not through one heroic act, but through many small exchanges. One man's tiredness handed to another man's waking. One man's cup filled after another has emptied his. One man's bunk warmed for the next. One man's reading checked by another's eyes. One man's listening continued by another's ears. The submarine is a machine, yes, but it is also a chain of human continuity. Each person carries the night a little way, then passes it on. Far above, the Atlantic surface moves under clouds. Perhaps rain has begun. A fine, cold rain touching the waves with a sound no one below can hear directly. The drops break and vanish at once. The sea accepts them without mark. The deck of the submarine, now underwater, does not feel the rain. The conning tower is hidden beneath the dark surface. The rails that shone in moonlight are now in black water. The open sky has gone from the boat. Only the memory of it remains in the damp coats, in the chill still held by boots, in the faint smell of rain that has not yet been completely absorbed into the warmer air below. Inside, the rain becomes imagination. A man remembers hearing it on roofs. Another remembers rain on leaves. Another does not think of rain at all. But for the listener, the rain can be present. Soft rain. Distant rain. Rain above the Atlantic, falling on a sea already full of water. A gentle sound that belongs more to sleep than to war. Imagine it there, far above the steel. A quiet weather no one needs to answer. The submarine moves beneath it, and the rain moves above it, and between them the dark sea holds both apart. The middle of the night has a different weight from evening. Evening still remembers the day. Morning still suggests what may come, but the middle of the night belongs to itself. It is deeper, slower, less concerned with edges. In the middle of the night, the mind often stops asking for progress. It accepts continuation. The watch continues, the hum continues, the breathing continues, the ocean continues. This is the part of the night where thoughts become rounder, where memory comes without being called, where routine becomes almost dreamlike. A man in the control room looks at the clock and sees that only a little time has passed since he last looked. He's not disappointed. He expected this. Time underwater can be thick. It can stretch around the body. It can make 10 minutes feel wide. But he also knows that time, however slow, is faithful. It passes whether watched or ignored. So he looks away from the clock and lets the instruments become his measure again. Depth steady. Course steady. Air steady. The night is not finished, but it is moving. A folded map lies near the chart table, not the one in use, but another, tucked aside. Its folds are soft at the corners. A small stain marks one edge. Perhaps coffee, perhaps water, perhaps both. Objects aboard the boat gather stories quietly, not dramatic stories, small ones. A stain from a cup held too loosely during a shift of the hull. A torn corner repaired with care. A pencil line erased but still faintly visible. A name written on the back of something and then crossed out. A strap shortened. A hinge oiled. A handle worn smooth. If one could read objects the way one reads books, the submarine would be a library of touch. The man at the chart table does not think this in words, but he feels the used nature of everything around him. Nothing is new in the emotional sense. Even if a part was once new, it has become part of the boat by being handled, depended upon, and carried through nights like this one. The chart table is not simply a table. It is where course becomes reassurance. The pencil is not simply a pencil. It is where uncertainty becomes a line. The lamp is not simply a lamp. It is a small moon created for men who cannot see the real one. The radio operator hears a faint change and adjusts carefully. For a few seconds his attention sharpens, not with fear, only with professional focus. He listens. The tone fades. The hiss returns. He writes a minor note, nothing more. Then his shoulders lower again. Even in a sleep story, attention may rise and fall gently, like breathing, a little more awake, then softer again. A small question, then no question. The night is allowed to have texture, as long as nothing breaks its calm. A man in the engine spaces drinks from a cup that has gone lukewarm. He does not mind. Warmth, once given, leaves a memory even after it fades. He swallows slowly. The taste is bitter, metallic at the edge, familiar. He sets the cup where it will not move. Then he wipes one hand on a rag and checks a reading by the light of a small lamp. The lamp's glow is yellow rather than red here, dim and practical. It catches the moisture on his sleeve and the worn surface of the gauge. He makes a sound low in his throat, not a word, only an acknowledgement. All is well enough. Well enough is a phrase that carries many nights. Not perfect, not easy, not comfortable, but steady. Steady enough to continue. Steady enough to rest by turns. Steady enough for a man to sleep 2 compartments away without knowing the precise work being done on his behalf. The submarine lives inside well enough. The human body often does too. Not every pillow perfect, not every thought resolved, not every worry answered, but enough warmth, enough rhythm, enough darkness, enough trust to close the eyes. In the sleeping quarters, the newly emptied bunk still holds a shallow warmth. Another man will take it soon. This is one of the small economies of the boat. Warmth passed from body to body. Sleep passed from shift to shift. No space left unused. No comfort wasted. The blanket, folded back, waits like a quiet invitation. When the next tired man arrives, he will not ask where the warmth came from. He will simply accept it. There is a humility in shared warmth, a practical tenderness. The passageway smells of damp wool and tea. A low lamp makes the moisture on a pipe glow faintly. A man moves through carrying a small bundle of laundry or cloth, though nothing here is ever truly fresh in the way it might be on land. Cleanliness is relative. Dryness is temporary. Order is always being made and unmade. A cloth dries halfway, then grows damp again. A sock improves, but not completely. A collar is brushed, then gathers oil. The men accept these compromises. At sea, underwater, one makes peace with degrees. Drier, warmer, quieter, steadier. Enough. The word enough returns often, though perhaps no one says it. Enough air, enough heat, enough light, enough silence, enough sleep, enough patience to reach the next hour. The boat is an education in enough. It strips away excess. It teaches the value of a cup, a blanket, a dry corner, a low voice, a reliable sound. It teaches that peace does not always require spaciousness. Sometimes peace is only the absence of interruption. Sometimes it is only the steady continuation of familiar things. The clock moves. The hands advance. The night remains dark. A man at the control room wall shifts his stance. His feet ache a little, but he is known worse. He bends one knee, then the other, quietly. He listens to a report and nods. A pencil moves again. The logbook receives another line. The pencil point dulls. Someone sharpens it with care, catching the shavings so they do not scatter. Even this is done quietly. The curls of wood are tiny, pale, fragile. For a moment, they smell faintly clean. The scent of fresh pencil wood rises through oil and damp air, a small surprising note of forest inside the submarine. Then it fades. But the man who sharpened the pencil notices it. Perhaps only for a second. Perhaps it brings to mind a schoolroom, a desk, a window, a quieter time. Then the moment passes. He writes. The boat continues. The story continues. The listener may drift. You may drift. You may let the pencil wood fade. You may let the red light blur. You may let the machinery become distant. You may imagine the sea not as a threat, but as an enormous darkness holding everything still. The submarine is small, but this story makes it safe. The men are tired, but this story lets them rest. The night is long, but this story has no hurry to reach morning. It can move slowly. It can repeat itself. It can breathe in long, gentle sentences. It can become softer as it goes. A man returns from the engine spaces with warmth still clinging to his clothes. When he passes near the sleeping quarters, the air there feels cooler by comparison. He pauses for a moment in the passage, listening to the sleeping breaths. The contrast touches him. Behind him, heat and oil. Before him, wool and dreams. Above him, steel. Around him, sea. He does not make a thought of it. He only feels it. Then he moves on. The control room receives him back into its red glow. Someone hands him a cup. He takes it. The cup is warm enough. The night is steady enough. The body continues. One of the men in the bunks dreams now of a train. Not loudly, not with speed. Only a slow train moving through a dark countryside. The dream may have come from the rhythm of the submarine. The hum becomes wheels. The passageway becomes a corridor. The bunks become sleeping compartments. The red light becomes a lamp in a carriage. The sea outside becomes fields under night. Dreams borrow what they can. They soften one world into another. In the dream, the train passes through a station without stopping. A lamp glows under a roof. No one calls out, no whistle sounds, only the wheels continue. Then even the train fades, leaving only rhythm. Rhythm is the deepest part. It is what remains when images dissolve. The engine's low note, the breath under blankets, the fan, the sea, the clock, the pulse, the listener's own breathing, perhaps slower now than before. In sleep stories, rhythm is more important than plot. Plot asks the mind to follow. Rhythm allows the mind to release. So the story stays with rhythm. It stays with the slow pulse of the boat. It stays with the gentle repetition of safe details. Warm cup, low lamp, folded chart, soft breath, distant rain, submerged dark, warm cup, low lamp, folded chart, soft breath, distant rain, submerged dark. The words return like the boat's own motion, not to force sleep, only to make room for it. The middle watch continues. In the control room, the older crewman now sits for a brief moment on the edge of something not meant to be a seat, but used as one for a minute. He keeps one eye on the gauges. Another man stands near enough to see them too. They do not speak. The older man takes a slow breath. His eyelids lower, then rise. He is tired, but not troubled. His tiredness has become part of him in the way the boat's hum has become part of the night. It is simply there, known, managed, carried. The younger crewman observes this without appearing to. He sees how tiredness can be worn calmly. He sees that experience does not remove fatigue. It only changes the way a person carries it. The older man lifts his cup, drinks, sets it down, rises again. The moment of rest is over. No announcement, no complaint, only continuation. Continuation is the quiet hero of this story. Not battle, not victory, not danger. Continuation. The ability to keep a lamp burning low, to keep a logbook accurate, to keep a kettle warm, to keep a blanket folded, to keep a watch while others sleep, to keep one's voice low in a narrow passage, to keep the boat steady through a long dark hour. The sea outside may be vast, but continuation makes the small interior world stronger. A little while later, the man who had woken from the bunk and taken his shift is fully awake now. The last threads of sleep have left him. He looks at the instruments with clear eyes. He feels the boat through the soles of his feet. He hears the hum not as background now, but as information. The transition from rest to duty is complete. Elsewhere, the man he relieved has found the warmed bunk. He has slipped under the blanket. He has closed his eyes. The exchange has become invisible, one awake, one asleep. Then later it will change again. The boat is a clock made of people. In the little galley the wrapped bread waits. The cup rail holds. The kettle cools slightly. The cloth still does not dry. A faint drip falls from somewhere into a container with a soft, irregular sound. Not steady enough to be a clock. Not loud enough to disturb. Just present. Drop. Long pause. Drop. Longer pause. The man in the galley listens to it for a while without intending to. Then he shifts the container a little, and the sound changes. Softer now. Better. He nods to himself. Small improvements matter. A little softer, a little warmer, a little less in the way, a little more orderly. These are the improvements available at midnight under the Atlantic, and because they are available, they are worth making. The boat's interior is not beautiful in the ordinary sense, but it has the beauty of things that continue to function through care. The beauty of a lamp that still works. The beauty of a hinge oiled before it complains. The beauty of a chart kept dry enough. The beauty of a blanket folded for another man. The beauty of a cup passed without spilling. The beauty of a sleeping face in a narrow bunk. The beauty of a low voice. The beauty of restraint. War often creates noise in the imagination, but much of survival is quiet. Quiet maintenance, quiet patience, quiet kindness, quiet endurance, quiet sleep. The story returns now to the control room, not because anything new has happened, but because the control room is the breathing centre of the submerged night. The red glow has become familiar. The gauges have become familiar. The men have become familiar in their half-lit shapes. The listener might imagine standing there for a moment, not responsible for anything, only observing. A lamp above the chart, a man leaning over a pencil mark, a cup near his elbow, the soft shine of worn metal, the hush of voices kept low, the steady floor beneath your feet. You are not needed. You are only allowed to watch. And because you are not needed, you may feel calm. The depth gauge holds, the compass holds, the course holds, the boat holds. A man reads the numbers softly. Another repeats them. The words become part of the room. They are not exciting words. They are sleep words in their own way. Steady, holding, level, quiet. Nothing unusual. Nothing unusual. The phrase returns like a lullaby for the watch. Nothing unusual. The sea outside remains dark. The boat inside remains warm. The night continues. In the sleeping quarters, the air grows heavier. Not unpleasantly, only with the accumulation of breath and warmth. A sleeper pushes one arm outside the blanket, then pulls it back in. Another man's foot shifts near the edge of a bunk. A folded coat slips slightly but does not fall. The lamp in the passage keeps its small glow. It is enough to show the way, not enough to wake the sleepers, enough again, always enough. The man in the warmed bunk has now fallen quickly into sleep. His body knew the path, from passage, to blanket, to breath, to darkness, to dream. No effort, only descent. A submarine descent beneath the sea, and a human descent into sleep, parallel and gentle. The boat had left the surface earlier. Now the man leaves the surface of waking. Both movements are slow. Both are held. Both enter a darker, quieter place. This is why the submarine in this story can become a sleep image. Not because of war, not because of danger, but because of enclosure, because of rhythm, because of the feeling of being wrapped away from the surface world. Because above there may be weather, distance, history, and uncertainty. But below, inside the story, there is only the next small breath, the next small sound, the next small warmth, the next small letting go. A man in the radio room presses 2 fingers lightly against one ear cup and listens. The hiss has shifted again. He waits. A faint fragment passes, too faint to matter. He lets it pass. The equipment glows. His pencil remains still. The chair creaks when he settles back. He does not fight the slowness of the hour. He accepts it. Some nights ask for action. This one asks for patience. And patience, when held gently, can become very close to sleep. In the engine spaces, a mechanic writes another reading. The number is within the expected range. He closes the small book. He runs a cloth over one surface, not because it must be perfect, but because his hands need a quiet task. The cloth moves slowly, back and forth, removing a little oil, spreading a little shine, back and forth, back and forth. A simple motion, a repetitive motion, the kind of motion that can calm the mind even in a room full of machinery. He folds the cloth once and sets it down. The engine hums, the warmth continues. A thought of home passes through him. Perhaps not even a full thought, only a smell, wood smoke, laundry soap, rain on stone, then it is gone. The boat does not forbid memory, but it does not always leave room for it to stay. Memory comes like a small visitor and moves on. The man lets it go without sadness. There will be time, perhaps, to think later. For now, the engine asks for listening. The night asks for steadiness. He gives both. In the control room, the clock moves beyond the deepest part of midnight. No dawn yet, no hint of morning, only the knowledge that time has passed. The men feel this knowledge in their bodies. The first heaviness of the night has changed into a slower, deeper heaviness. The kind that makes voices softer without effort. The kind that makes each movement more deliberate. The kind that turns routine into something nearly dreamlike. Someone adjusts a lampshade. The red light lowers by the smallest amount. The room becomes even gentler. A low murmur moves through the boat, not from one source, but from all sources together. It is the sum of the vessel, a total sound. If you listen to it long enough, you might stop hearing it as sound and begin to feel it as place. The boat is not where the hum happens. The boat is the hum. The boat is the red light. The boat is the warm cup. The boat is the damp wool. The boat is the sleeping breath. The boat is the pressure outside and the patience inside. The boat is the night made narrow enough to hold. The story begins to slow further now, not because it has less to say, but because the night itself has slowed. The men move less. The boat changes little. The ocean remains dark. This is the middle, the long centre, the hour when a listener may begin to drift away from meaning and into feeling. You may let the words become less important. You may notice only the softness, the repetitions, the warm images, the low lamps, the old radio, the folded chart, the wool blanket, the muted engine, the paper map, the narrow bunk, the cup of tea, the distant rain far above, the steady sea all around. A man near the control room wall whispers a question. Another answers with 2 words. Both voices fade immediately. The words are not important to the story, only the manner of them matters. Low, measured, respectful of sleep. The whole boat seems to speak this way now. Even the machinery seems muted by the hour. Even the metal seems reluctant to make more sound than necessary. This is the hush of a vessel that has settled into its night. The Atlantic beyond the hull is not peaceful in any sentimental way. It is simply vast, cold, old, indifferent. But inside the boat, human beings have made a small temporary peace. They have done it with lamps, blankets, schedules, tools, cups, charts, and care. They have done it by lowering voices, by saving bread, by taking turns, by trusting routine. This is one of the quiet truths of difficult times. People make little islands of order wherever they can. A clean corner, a warm mug, a folded cloth, a shared silence, a watch kept faithfully. A man in the sleeping quarters exhales deeply and turns onto his side. The movement is slow and heavy. He does not wake. His hand slides under the blanket and rests near his chest. His breathing resumes. The bunk creaks once, then nothing. The man above him remains asleep. The man beyond him dreams. The man in the passage passes without touching the curtain. The sleepers remain held. The boat remains held. The listener, too, may be held by the same slow image. A narrow bunk, a warm blanket, a steady vessel. Dark water outside, nothing urgent inside. In the galley, the last of the tea in one pot has grown too strong. The man there dilutes it slightly. Not much. Water is not wasted. He swirls the pot once, slowly. The liquid inside makes a small sound. He pours a little into a cup for himself and holds it near his face. Steam rises. His eyes lower. He takes one careful sip. It is not good tea, perhaps, but it is warm, and warm is enough. He stands in the dimness, cup in hand, listening to the boat as one might listen to a house at night. The comparison is imperfect, but human beings make homes in imperfect places. They hang cloths. They place cups. They save crumbs. They learn which boards creak. They know the sound of a door. They recognize the breathing of those nearby. Even a submarine, crowded and metallic, can gather a strange domestic feeling after enough hours inside it. Not comfort exactly, not ease, but familiarity. A man knows where to put his hand in darkness. That is a kind of home. The radio room receives a little of this domestic quiet too. The operator has placed his cup in the same corner each time. He knows the exact angle at which it remains safest. He knows where the pencil rolls if not stopped. He knows which dial has the stiffest movement. He knows the chair's complaint. He knows the faint smell that comes from the equipment when it has been on for hours. These small knowings make the room less mechanical. They make it personal. They make it survivable. He listens. He waits. He breathes. The hiss continues. The story remains here with you. Not pushing. Not asking. Only offering another quiet passage. The submarine is moving. The night is wide. The men are tired. The lamps are low. The ocean is dark. You may rest inside the image without needing to become part of it. You may be only a gentle observer, carried safely by the voice of the story. Nothing will require you to act. Nothing will call you suddenly. The watch is kept by others. The gauges are read by others. The chart is marked by others. You may let go. The control room's red glow seems even softer now. A man's face appears in it like a face seen through the last moments before sleep. Clear for a breath. Then blurred. The brass rim of a gauge shines, then dulls. The pencil moves, then rests. A cup lifts, then lowers. These are the movements of the hour. Small, circular, reassuring. The story does not need more than this. It needs only to stay with the night until the mind trusts it, until the listener's thoughts become less sharp, until sleep feels nearer than the surface world. In the engine spaces, the mechanic hears a slight change and turns his head. He listens. The sound settles. Nothing. He waits a few more breaths to be sure. Still nothing. The machinery returns to its familiar layered murmur. He does not mention it because there is nothing to mention. But the act of listening has been done. The night has been checked. The boat has been trusted again. He reaches for the cloth and wipes his hands. Slowly. Thoroughly. Each finger. Each palm. Not clean, exactly. Cleaner. Drier. Better. Enough. Enough is everywhere. The concept itself becomes soothing. Enough light to see. Enough warmth to stay comfortable. Enough food to continue. Enough silence to sleep. Enough motion to feel carried. Enough routine to trust the night. Enough story to let go of the day. You may take the word with you for a moment. Enough. Whatever is unfinished may remain unfinished. Whatever is unresolved may wait. Whatever has been loud may grow quieter. For now, there is enough. The boat holds. The night holds. The breath holds and releases. Holds and releases. Holds and releases. A man in the sleeping quarters wakes just enough to pull the blanket higher. This is all he does. The blanket reaches his shoulder, his hand drops back. He sleeps again. No thought, no worry, no decision, only the body caring for itself in the dark. The movement is small, but tender. The sleeping body knows how to seek warmth. It knows how to turn away from cold. It knows how to soften when safe enough. The story notices this, and then lets it go. Not every moment must be held. Some moments are only meant to pass gently. The Atlantic outside is still unseen. The rain above, if it continues, is also unseen. Perhaps it has stopped. Perhaps clouds have thinned. Perhaps the moon has returned to the surface water. The submarine does not know by sight. It knows only depth, sound, pressure, motion. It knows the sea through touch. There is something calming in that. The eye is not always needed. The night can be understood by other senses. A hum, a temperature, a scent, a weight, a rhythm, a breath. A listener in bed can understand the story the same way, not by following every event, but by feeling the rhythm of it. The middle of the night continues, long and slow. The control room, the radio room, the hydrophone watch, the engine spaces, the galley, the sleeping quarters. Each holds its own version of quiet. Together they make the vessel whole. The control room keeps attention. The radio room keeps distance. The hydrophone keeps listening. The engine spaces keep warmth. The galley keeps small comfort. The sleeping quarters keep dreams. And the hull keeps all of them inside the dark Atlantic. This is the boat at midnight. Not a symbol, not a spectacle. A small world of people, objects, routines, and breath. The story returns once more to the man in the bunk who had been almost awake. He is fully asleep now. His earlier counting has vanished. The fan no longer has a name. The hull no longer has a name. The distant cup no longer has a name. All sounds have blended into one soft field. He floats inside it. The bunk supports him. The blanket warms him. The boat carries him. The sea surrounds him. Sleep has done what sleep does. It has taken separate things and made them whole. Perhaps this is why long, quiet stories help. They gather scattered thoughts and give them one slow current to follow. A lamp, a cup, a map, a bunk, a boat, a sea, a night. Again and again, the current returns to these things, and each return asks a little less of the mind. There is no puzzle, no urgency, no sharp turn, only a familiar current. Follow it if you like, or let it carry you without following. Either is fine. The boat continues through the black water. Somewhere deep in the vessel, a pipe ticks 3 times as it cools or settles. Tick, 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 then nothing. The sound is small enough that only someone nearby notices. He notices, recognizes it, and lets it pass. Recognition turns sound into calm. An unknown noise might wake the mind. A known one lets it sleep. So much of peace is recognition. The familiar hum, the familiar lamp, the familiar blanket, the familiar breath, the familiar voice telling a slow story. The watch changes again, or begins to prepare to change. Time has moved after all. Men who are asleep will soon wake. Men who are awake will soon lie down. The boat's circle continues. The man in the warmed bunk may be called later, but not yet. Another man will finish his cup. Another will mark a reading. Another will listen to the sea and hear mostly silence. Another will place bread where it can be found. Another will lower his voice near the bunks. The story does not need to follow every exchange. It is enough to know they are happening quietly, like unseen hands keeping a lamp from going out. The engine room remains warm. The mechanic now steps aside for another man to pass. The passage is narrow. They turn by instinct, 2 bodies moving through a space that barely allows one. Their shoulders avoid contact by inches. One carries a small object wrapped in cloth, the other carries nothing. A nod, a breath. They pass. It is such a simple thing, passing another person in a narrow space. But aboard the submarine, it becomes a repeated lesson in awareness. No movement belongs only to the person making it. Every movement has neighbours. Every sound has listeners. Every object has consequences. The boat teaches interdependence without speeches. In the control room, the new watch arrives softly. One man is still blinking away sleep. His face is puffy from the bunk. His hair is flattened. He stands a little awkwardly at first, as if his body has not fully remembered being vertical. Then the room teaches him again. The red light, the instruments, the hum, the warm cup offered by someone who knows the look of fresh waking. He takes it. The first sip pulls him closer to the room. The report is given. Steady, steady. Nothing unusual. The relieved man leaves. The circle completes another turn. A person listening now may begin to feel that the story itself is turning in circles. That is intentional. The night turns in circles. Watches repeat. Breaths repeat. Sounds repeat. The boat repeats its small assurances. In ordinary stories, repetition may seem like delay. In sleep stories, repetition is a doorway. Each return makes the scene safer. Each familiar image asks less effort from the mind. Each phrase, steady and soft, invites thought to rest. So the story returns. The lamp, the gauge, the chart, the cup, the bunk, the breath, the sea. And each time they feel a little quieter. The new man at the instruments now stands fully in the watch. He has received the room has received him. His eyes move through the familiar pattern. Depth, trim, air, battery, course, time, depth again. The order itself is soothing, a small litany of function, a way of keeping the night whole. He does not rush. The needles hold, the boat holds, the ocean presses, the hull answers, all is contained, all is steady. For a few minutes, no one speaks at all. This silence is not empty, it is shared. Everyone inside it knows what is being done. One man listening, one man writing, one man steering, one man waiting, one man resting in the next compartment, one man moving softly through the passage. Silence can be full of trust when each person understands his place. The submarine continues beneath the Atlantic, and the night, deep as it is, begins slowly, almost invisibly, to lean toward morning. Not dawn yet, not light, not even the idea of light in any visible way. Only the knowledge that the deepest middle cannot last forever. The clock suggests it, the bodies sense it, the watches turn toward it. Morning is still far above, hidden behind water, clouds, and darkness. But somewhere in time, it has begun its slow approach. For now, the boat remains in the dark, and the dark remains gentle. A man in the galley warms a little more water. The sound is low, the cup is ready, the bread is nearly gone, but enough remains, always enough. He wraps what is left. He wipes the small surface again, a habit, a comfort. He adjusts the lamp. In the lamp's glow, the galley looks almost like a memory of a kitchen. Small, cramped, metallic, but still, in its own way, a place where warmth is made. The man rests his hand near the kettle and listens to the quiet. He has been awake a long time. His thoughts are slow now. He does not mind. There is something almost peaceful about having a simple task when the world is complicated. Warm water, clean cup, folded cloth, saved bread. These are tasks the hands understand. The hands do not need to think about the war. The hands do not need to think about the whole ocean. They need only pour carefully, fold carefully, place carefully. The mind rests inside the hands. In the radio room, the operator writes a time mark. The pencil moves smoothly. His handwriting has grown smaller as the night has deepened. The page contains little. That is good. The best watch sometimes is one where the page remains mostly quiet. He looks at the few lines there. They do not tell a dramatic story. They tell of patience, of listening, of steadiness, of nothing requiring sudden movement. He closes the book halfway, then opens it again because the watch is not over. His fingers rest on the edge. The low glow of the equipment remains, the hiss remains, he remains. In the sleeping quarters, dreams are deep. One man's brow tightens for a moment, then smooths. Another turns with a slow heaviness that speaks of true sleep. A blanket slips, then catches on an elbow. A boot under the bunk shifts as the boat moves. No one wakes. The sleeping compartment is full of tiny adjustments. The body's quiet conversation with discomfort. A shoulder moves away from pressure. A foot seeks warmth. A hand opens. A breath deepens. Sleep is not stillness. It is a slow maintenance of the self. Even asleep, the body continues its work kindly. Perhaps the listener's body is doing this too. A shoulder softening, a jaw loosening, a hand unclenching, a breath deepening. You do not need to command it. You may simply notice, and then stop noticing. Let the body find its own bunk, its own blanket, its own rhythm. Let the voice of the story become background. Let the submarine become distant. Let the sea become darker and softer. Let the old night carry itself. The control room grows quieter still. The men there are alert but calm. Alertness does not always need tension. It can be broad and low, like a lamp turned down but not extinguished. Their attention rests on the instruments the way a hand might rest on the back of a chair. Present, ready, unforced. The submarine does not ask for fear now. It asks for steadiness. Steadiness is given. The chart table lamp burns on. The map remains open. The pencil lies across it for a while, casting a thin shadow. The shadow looks longer than the pencil because of the angle of the light. A small thing. A quiet thing. A detail the tired navigator might notice and then forget. At night, the mind sometimes fixes on such details. The curve of steam from a cup, the glint on a screw head, the way a paper edge lifts and falls, the sound of a sleeve brushing metal. These details keep the mind near the present. Not the whole war, not the whole ocean. Only this, only now, only enough. A watchman thinks briefly of the surface, not with longing exactly, more as a fact. Above them, perhaps the clouds are moving. Above them, perhaps the rain has ended. Above them, the cold deck waits in darkness. The hatch remains sealed. The sea remains between. The thought of the surface drifts through him and fades. He's not on the surface. He is here. His work is here. His cup is here. The red lamp is here. The gauge is here. The night is here. And here is manageable. That is another quiet lesson. Do not live in the whole ocean. Live in the compartment. Do not carry the whole night. Carry the watch. Do not solve the whole future. Read the gauge. Hold the cup. Take the breath. Let the next thing be small enough for the hands. The submarine, by being narrow, makes the world narrow too. And sometimes a narrow world is easier to rest inside. The engine room pulse travels forward again. The sleeping men feel it without waking. The control room stands on it. The radio room listens through it. The galley works beside it. The whole boat is joined by this low vibration. It is the thread through the night. If you imagine placing one hand on the wall, you might feel it there. A faint tremor, not alarming, only present. A reminder that the vessel is alive with motion. A reminder that stillness and movement can exist together. The boat seems still inside, but it moves. The sleeper seems still, but breath moves. The night seems still, but time moves. Everything moves gently. Everything continues. The story could stay here for a long time. In a way, it does. It stays in the red-lit room. It stays in the bunk. It stays near the warm cup. It stays by the chart. It stays beside the engine's low breath. It stays under the rain above the sea. It stays because sleep often comes not from arrival, but from remaining. Remaining with a safe image. Remaining with a calm rhythm. Remaining with a voice that does not hurry. And so we remain a little longer. A man folds a blanket for another. A man marks a number. A man listens to the sea. A man warms a cup. A man checks a pipe. A man sleeps. The boat continues. Again, a blanket, a number, a listening, a cup, a pipe, a sleeping breath. The boat continues. Again, again, again. The repetition becomes softer each time, less like information, more like waves. The final part of the night has not arrived yet, but it is drawing closer. There will be a time when the air feels slightly different, when the clock suggests that morning exists even if no sunlight can be seen, when men begin to imagine surfacing, breakfast, fresh readings, new orders, or simply another stretch of routine. But not yet. For now, the night remains deep. The submarine remains submerged. The lamps remain low. The bunks remain warm. The Atlantic remains vast and dark. And the listener may continue drifting, held in the quiet middle of the story, where nothing sudden happens and nothing needs to be solved. Only the slow hum, only the soft breath, only the dark water, only the warm cup, only the red light, only the steady, steady passage of midnight beneath the sea. The last part of the night arrives without announcing itself. It does not arrive with light, because no light can reach the boat from the surface. It does not arrive with bird song, because there are no birds down here beneath the Atlantic. It does not arrive with windows slowly turning grey, or with rooftops becoming visible, or with the usual quiet signs by which morning approaches a house on land. It arrives only as a change in the feeling of time, a subtle thinning of the darkness inside the mind, a knowledge that the longest stretch of midnight has passed, even though the lamps are still low and the gauges still glow red, and the sea outside remains as dark as it was before. The clock shows it first, then the bodies know it. The men who have been awake for hours begin to feel the difference between deep night and early morning, even in a place where the sky is hidden. Their thoughts become slower in one way and clearer in another. The sleepiest part of the watch is behind them. The boat still hums, the air still moves through vents with its soft, contained breath. The ocean still presses gently against the hull. But time has turned a corner somewhere in the dark. The control room remains steady. A man near the gauges shifts his stance, careful not to let fatigue make him careless. He has stood for a long while, but standing is part of the work, and work at this hour is made of repetition. He looks at the depth. He looks at the trim. He looks at the clock. He looks back at the depth. The same circle as before. But now the circle feels closer to completion. Not complete yet, only closer. There is comfort in that, not the excitement of an ending, only the quiet knowledge that even the longest watch moves forward by degrees. The navigator at the chart table makes a small note in the margin. His pencil has been sharpened again, and the line it leaves is darker than the last. He smooths the chart with the side of his hand. The paper is soft from the damp air. It has absorbed the night. It holds faint creases, faint stains, faint pressure marks from earlier measurements. The ocean on the paper remains calm, pale and silent. Outside, the real ocean remains unseen. Between the two, the man keeps his careful line. He does not think of himself as doing anything poetic. He is simply doing the next thing. That is all. And sometimes, in the deepest hours, doing the next thing is the gentlest way to live. The red lamps make the chart table look older than it is. They make the brass dividers seem like a tool from another century. They make the pencil shadows long and soft. They turn the navigator's hand into a shape of amber and brown. There is a small beauty in the scene, though no one aboard would call it beautiful. Beauty is not what they are looking for. They are looking for accuracy, for routine, for the boat's steady place in the dark. But beauty sometimes appears where attention is patient. It gathers around worn objects. It rests on the rim of a cup. It shines briefly on damp metal. It hides inside repetition. The radio operator hears the faint hiss of distance, and, for a time, nothing more. His shoulders are tired, his ears are tired, even his thoughts seem to have become quieter from listening so long. He adjusts the headphones slightly, not because the sound is wrong, but because the pressure on one ear has become uncomfortable. The small relief of moving them is almost luxurious. He breathes out slowly. The equipment glows. The little lights do not flicker. The dial remains where it should be. He writes a short notation, then lets his hand rest. Nothing urgent, nothing unusual, nothing that needs to be carried loudly through the boat. The phrase has become almost a blessing. Nothing unusual. In a different kind of story, nothing unusual might seem empty. Here, it is the shape of peace. Nothing unusual means the sleepers may remain asleep. Nothing unusual means the coffee may cool slowly. Nothing unusual means the chart may be marked without interruption. Nothing unusual means the mechanic may wipe his hands and listen without tension. Nothing unusual means the ocean continues its dark pressure outside, and inside, the boat remains warm enough, steady enough, known enough. Nothing unusual is the calmest sentence the night can give. In the hydrophone space, the operator listens again into the water. The sea, in these late hours, seems even broader, not louder, broader, as if the darkness itself has widened. The headphones bring him long stretches of softness, the faint underwater language of distance and movement. He does not lean forward now as much as before. His posture has settled. His body has learnt the chair for this watch. His hands rest lightly. He listens. He waits. He lets the sea be the sea. If a sound comes, he will hear it. If nothing comes, he will keep listening. That is the agreement. The agreement is simple, and simple agreements are easy for the tired mind to hold. The engine spaces are still warm. The man aft has taken another reading. The number is expected. He notes it. He touches a pipe. Expected. He listens to the engine rhythm. Expected. He checks the rag beneath a small drip. Expected. The word does not need to be spoken. Everything expected means the night remains soft. Everything expected means no one needs to hurry. He has sweat at the back of his neck despite the hour. He wipes it with a cloth, then folds the cloth over the rail where it can be reached again. His movements are slower now, but not careless. The slowest movements can be the most careful when a person knows exactly what he is doing. In the sleeping quarters, the men who have slept longest are beginning to approach waking, though they do not know it yet. Sleep becomes lighter before it ends. Dreams thin. The body turns more often. A hand reaches toward a blanket edge and then relaxes. A foot shifts, a breath changes. One man hears a sound from the passage and folds it into a dream. Another senses that his turn may come soon, but not soon enough to open his eyes. The room remains dark. The bunks remain close. The blankets still hold warmth. The sleepers float between the deep water of sleep and the surface of waking, not yet rising, not yet needed. A man who has been sleeping dreams now of a harbour. It is not a clear harbour, only fog, wooden posts, a rope, a lamp, and water moving gently against stone. Perhaps the dream comes from the submarine. Perhaps the mind, hearing water and feeling motion, invents a safer shore. In the dream, nothing dramatic happens. No one calls out, no bell rings, a lantern glows, fog moves softly, the water laps. The dream is quiet enough to remain. Then even the harbour dissolves, and the man returns to deeper darkness for a little while longer. A narrow passageway holds the smell of wool and metal. Someone has hung damp socks where warmth may reach them. They are not fully dry. They may never become fully dry before being needed again. But they are drier than they were. A small improvement, a real improvement. The boat is full of such modest victories. A little warmer, a little quieter, a little more orderly, a little closer to the next watch, a little nearer to morning. In a hard world, small improvements are not small to the people living inside them. They are the way the night is made bearable. The galley lamp still glows. The man there pours the last of a pot into a cup and begins preparing more, slowly, because the turning of the watch will bring men who want warmth. He measures by habit. Not too much, not too little. Enough. The word returns again. Enough. The kettle warms, the cup waits, the bread is checked, a tin is closed more firmly, the cloth is moved to a slightly better place. There is no applause for such work. No one will remember the exact angle of the cup or the careful way the cloth was folded. But the next tired man will find the cup ready. That is memory enough. The control room breathes in its red light. A watchman receives the warm drink and nods. The nod is almost invisible. The man who gives the cup knows what it means. Thank you. I needed this. I can continue. No words required. The cup settles between two hands. The steam rises. The watchman looks over it toward the gauge. His eyes are heavy, but steady. The warmth reaches his fingers, then his palms, then seems to move through him in a slow line. The body appreciates before the mind has time to comment. For a while he stands like that, warmed by a cup in a red-lit room beneath an unseen sea. The submarine is now deep inside the last watch of the night. Not near daylight exactly, not in any visible way, but nearer than before. The hours have been carried. The quiet has been maintained. Men have slept and woken. Cups have been filled and emptied. Readings have been written. Sounds have been listened to. Small adjustments have been made, and all of these tiny acts have brought the boat forward through time. Not dramatically, not loudly, but faithfully. The listener may notice that the story has become less concerned with movement. There is less to describe because the night has become stiller. This is the natural shape of a sleep story. The beginning brings you into the place. The middle lets you wander through it. The end lets the place grow soft enough that you no longer need to wander. You can remain. You can rest. You can let the same images return with less and less demand. Red light, warm cup, chart paper, wool blanket, muted engine, distant rain above the sea, dark water, steady breath. Nothing unusual. The control room changes watch again with the same gentleness. One tired man gives his report. Another receives it. The words are low. The details are familiar. No one raises his voice. The relieved man steps away and feels the fatigue arrive more fully now that he's no longer holding it back for the sake of duty. This often happens. While the work remains, the body remains upright. When the work passes to another, the body remembers how tired it is. He walks toward the bunks with the careful sway of a man who has been awake too long. The boat moves beneath him, he moves with it. In the passage, he passes a man carrying a cup. They turn sideways. Their shoulders avoid each other by memory. The cup does not spill. The relieved man reaches the sleeping quarters. A bunk waits. Perhaps not his alone. Perhaps still warm. He removes what must be removed, folds what must be folded, and slides into the narrow space. The blanket covers him. The darkness closes around him, close but not unkind. He is asleep sooner than he expects. The body, having waited politely through the watch, now takes what it is owed. His breathing deepens. Another exchange is complete. The man who has just taken the watch feels the first minutes of wakefulness stretch before him. But he knows the shape of them. He knows the red light will become clearer. He knows the hum will become familiar again. He knows the gauges will find their order in his mind. He knows the cup will help, so he does not resist the heaviness. He lets it pass through him like a slow cloud. He looks at the instruments: depth, trim, air, battery, course, time, depth again. The circle begins anew. The Atlantic continues to hold the boat in darkness. Perhaps the surface is calmer now. Perhaps the rain has stopped and the clouds are thinning. Perhaps dawn is beginning somewhere beyond the horizon, not yet visible even above, and certainly not here below. It does not matter yet. The boat's morning will arrive by clock and routine before it arrives by light. Beneath the sea, morning is an idea before it is a colour. It is a shift in duties, a warming of more coffee, a new note in the log, a change in the kind of tiredness in the room. In the engine spaces, the heat remains faithful. The mechanic who has worked through the long dark hour now hands over small information to another. The words are few, expected, steady. Watch this. No trouble. The new man nods. He touches the same pipe. He listens to the same note. He feels the same low pulse. One man steps back. Another steps forward. The machinery continues without caring who watches, but the men care, and their care is what turns machinery from force into service. The leaving mechanic wipes his hands once more. The cloth comes away dark. He folds it. He places it where it belongs. He takes a slow breath. Then he moves forward through the boat, from heat toward the cooler compartments, from duty toward the possibility of rest. As he walks, he passes through layers of atmosphere: engine warmth, passage damp, galley smell, coffee, bread, wool, red light, sleeping breath. Each compartment has its own weather, its own little climate, and he travels through them the way a person on land might move through rooms in a house after midnight. A kitchen, a hallway, a study, a bedroom. The comparison is imperfect, but the feeling is there. A vessel at night becomes a kind of house because people are inside it, keeping routines. The galley man gives him a cup. The mechanic accepts it, though he's almost too tired to want it. He drinks anyway. The warmth enters him. He closes his eyes for one breath while standing, then opens them. He thanks the other man with a nod. Again, no words needed. The boat is full of nods by now. Nods of thanks, nods of understanding, nods of confirmation. Nods that say the night is long, but we're still here, and all remain steady. In the radio room, the operator nears the end of his watch. The hiss that has accompanied him for so long seems almost personal now. He has listened through stretches of nothing, through tiny shifts, through faint traces, through silence so steady it became like weather. His ears feel warm beneath the headphones. He lifts one side briefly. The room sound returns. The hum, the chair, the distant cup, the living boat. Then he lowers the headphone again for the last minutes. The discipline of finishing matters. A watch is not over until it is handed over. He writes the final small note for his period. The letters are slightly less neat now, but still clear. The incoming operator arrives quietly. A low exchange follows. Nothing unusual. The best phrase again. The relieving operator sits. The chair gives its familiar creak. The first man stands, stretches his shoulders gently, and steps into the passage with the dazed expression of someone emerging from a private tunnel of sound. For a moment, without the headphones, the whole submarine seems loud to him. Then his ears adjust. The boat becomes soft again. The hydrophone watch follows its own change. The operator removes the headphones and rubs the place where they pressed. Another man takes the seat. The sea continues outside, not noticing. The first operator speaks softly, mostly quiet, nothing close. The second nods and begins to listen. The underwater hush enters new ears. The old listener steps away. He carries the sea's silence with him for a few moments, as if it has soaked into his thoughts. Even in the passage, even near the galley, even among the human smells and low lamps, part of him still hears the broad dark water. Then it fades. The boat's interior sounds return. The night lets him go. The sleeping quarters now receive another tired body. A bunk has opened. A blanket has retained warmth. The man who enters does not think in sentences anymore. He thinks in steps, boots, coat, bunk, blanket, eyes, breath. The order is enough. He lowers himself into the narrow space. The blanket is rough under his hand. The mattress is familiar. The low ceiling above him is close. He hears the muffled movement of others. He smells wool, soap, metal, coffee, and breath. He closes his eyes. A moment later, the control room is far away. The engine spaces are far away. The ocean is far away, even though it is inches beyond the hull. Sleep makes distance differently. It can make a close thing distant. It can make a far memory near. It can turn a steel compartment into a room under rain. It can turn machinery into a river. It can turn the Atlantic into a dark blanket. The sleeping man does not know any of this. He only sleeps. And the story, respecting him, grows quieter. There is a long stretch now when very little happens. The submarine remains submerged. The gauges hold. The men on watch continue their circles of attention. The sleepers sleep. The galley warms another small portion of water. The engine room maintains its heat. The radio room listens. The hydrophone listens. The chart table waits for the next mark. The ocean remains outside. This is not emptiness. This is the deep centre of calm. A long-held note, a breath extended, a candle flame shielded from wind. Nothing has to happen for the night to be meaningful. The fact that it continues gently is enough. The listener may begin to feel the final movement of the story now, not an ending in the sharp sense, only a soft leaning toward rest. The words become simpler, the images return, the pace slows further, red light, warm cup, paper map, wool blanket, low engine, damp passage, soft breath, dark water. Nothing unusual, all steady, all held, all quiet. A man at the chart table rests his palm on the paper for a moment, perhaps to keep it flat, perhaps simply because the gesture is grounding. The paper feels cool, slightly damp. The pencil lies nearby. The lamp hums faintly, or perhaps that is another sound blending into it. He looks at the line they have followed through the night. It is only a line, but the boat has moved with it. The sleeping men have moved with it. The cups and blankets and letters and tools have moved with it. A line on paper has become a night beneath the sea. He writes another small notation, then he lets the pencil rest. The watchman near the gauges takes a slow breath and releases it. The exhale is quiet, almost invisible. The room receives it. Another man turns a page. The page makes a soft sound. A cup touches metal. A low voice speaks 2 words. The boat answers with its hum. The rhythm continues. The rhythm is the story now. The beginning has gone. The descent has gone. The long middle has softened. What remains is rhythm, and rhythm is enough. Somewhere above, dawn may be beginning. Not in the submarine. Not yet. But on the surface, far above the curved steel, the sky may be shifting from black to charcoal, from charcoal to grey. Clouds may be thinning. Rain may be only mist now. The waves may carry a faint, cold light along their backs. No one below sees it, but the thought of it can enter the story gently, not as a sudden brightness, only as a far promise. The world above will return eventually. The hatch will open eventually. Fresh wind will enter eventually. But not now. Now remains soft. The boat stays submerged a little longer. The sea stays close. The men stay with their routines. Morning in this story does not rush them. It waits politely beyond the water. The galley grows slightly busier, though still quiet. More cups are prepared. More warmth is made. The first suggestions of a new cycle appear. A man checks supplies. Another folds a cloth. Someone asks for tea in a whisper that sounds hoarse from sleep. The answer is a nod. The cup is filled. The ship's morning is not cheerful, not bright, not loud. It is only a continuation with warmer cups, continuation again. The word returns, gentle and faithful. A crew does not begin the day all at once. It emerges in pieces. One man from a bunk, one man from a chair, one man from the engine room, one man from the listening post. Each carries part of the night with him. Each receives part of the morning from another. The control room remains the centre where these pieces meet. A sleepy face appears in the red light. A tired face disappears into the passage. A fresh note is written. A cup changes hands. A reading is spoken. The vessel continues. The men who slept are not fully rested in any luxurious sense. No one aboard truly is. But they are rested enough. There is that word again. Enough sleep to stand. Enough warmth to think. Enough food to continue. Enough quiet to keep one's voice gentle. Enough trust to take the next watch. It may not sound like much from the outside, but inside the submarine, enough is a treasure. Enough carries the crew across the long water. Enough turns night into morning. Enough allows a tired person to close his eyes again when the story is finished. The man who dreamed of a harbour wakes slowly. He does not remember the dream clearly. Only fog, a lamp. Water against stone. For a moment, the dream and the submarine overlap. The low lamp in the passage becomes the harbour lamp. The creak of the hull becomes rope against wood. The smell of coffee becomes morning by the docks. Then the dream fades. He knows where he is. He knows the boat. He knows the bunk above him. He knows the blanket. He lies still for a few more seconds before rising. Those few seconds are precious. Not sleep, not waking. A quiet shore between the two. Then his name is spoken softly. He answers. He sits up. The day, such as it is beneath the sea, begins for him. He folds the blanket carefully for whoever will need it next. He does not think of the gesture as generous. It is simply what one does. The blanket must be ready. The space must be usable. Warmth must be preserved. He pulls on his boots and moves into the passage. A man passes him with a cup. Another nod. Another quiet exchange. The boat has performed this pattern countless times and will perform it again. The repetition is not dull. It is the structure that makes rest possible. A voice from the control room asks for a reading. Another voice answers. Softly. Steadily, the submarine remains in its long, dark balance. Outside, the sea may be lighter near the surface now. The upper water may be grey with dawn, but here, the ocean remains a surrounding night. The instruments continue to define the world. Depth, course, time, air. The men continue to move through that world with care. If the story were to widen now and look far beyond the boat, it might find continents, cities, harbours, homes, fields, factories, offices, kitchens, railway stations, hospitals and quiet bedrooms where other people are waking or sleeping through their own wartime mornings. But this sleep story does not widen that far. It stays with the small world it has made. The submarine, the watch, the cup, the bunk, the chart, the hum, the ocean. A large history can be approached through a small lamp. A vast war can be softened into one quiet night, not to deny what the war was, not to make it romantic, but to remember that within it, people still breathed, waited, warmed their hands, folded blankets, and watched over one another through ordinary hours. The last watch begins to feel settled. The new men are awake enough now. The old men are asleep enough. The coffee is warm enough. The boat is steady enough. The night is nearly carried. Nearly. Not finished, but almost. A man in the engine spaces hears the same low note and smiles faintly to himself, though no one sees. The sound is faithful. The machinery has kept its promise for another stretch. He knows better than to trust blindly, but he also knows when to accept steadiness. He accepts it now. He writes the number. He closes the little book. He places it in its safe spot. He wipes his hand along the rail as he moves, feeling the vibration. the boat speaks through his palm. In the radio room, the new operator has settled into listening. For him, the watch is beginning. For the previous man, it has ended. This is how time feels different inside different bodies. One person's ending is another's beginning. One person's sleep is another's duty. One person's warm cup has just been filled while another's is cooling. The boat contains all these times at once. The clock gives 1 hour, but each body lives its own version of it. For the listener, there is no duty at all, only the story, only the soft continuation, only the opportunity to let your own body decide what it needs. Perhaps you're still awake. Perhaps you're halfway into sleep. Perhaps you have drifted and returned. All of that is fine. The story does not punish drifting. It is made for drifting. It is made so you can leave it and find it again. A lamp, a cup, a chart, a bunk, a sea. You can return anywhere. The meaning will still be soft. The boat will still be moving. The night will still be safe. The final quiet deepens. It is no longer the heavy middle of midnight. It is the softer dark before morning. The hour when dreams thin but still hold. The hour when people on land turn under blankets and pull them closer. The hour when rainwater rests in gutters. The hour when lamps burn low in kitchens, stations, shelters, ships and huts. The hour when watchmen everywhere in many places wait for the first sign that their watch is nearly done. Here, beneath the Atlantic, the sign is not light. It is simply time. Time carried successfully. The control room holds that time carefully. A man looks at the clock and nods once. The navigator notes another estimate. The watchman drinks the last of his cup. The radio operator listens. The hydrophone operator listens. The mechanic checks. The cook warms. The sleepers breathe. The verbs are simple now. Listen, check, warm, breathe, hold, rest. The story has become simple because sleep likes simplicity. At the beginning, there were more things to see. The deck, the wind, the hatch, the descent, the compartments, the lamps. Now the images have narrowed. A soft breath, a warm cup, a red glow, a dark sea, a body resting, a vessel holding steady. The narrowing is gentle. It gathers the mind inward, like closing curtains, like dimming a lamp, like folding the day and placing it aside. The submarine may remain submerged for some time yet, or it may surface later when the routine allows. The story does not need to describe it loudly. It does not need the hatch opening, the deck shining, the wind returning. Those things may happen after the listener has already drifted away. The story can leave them as possibilities. For now, there is only the protected interior. There is only the low world beneath the water. There is only the deep enclosed calm. A man in a bunk sleeps with one hand under his cheek. Another sleeps with his arm over his chest. Another has turned toward the wall. Their blankets rise and fall. Their boots wait below them. Their coats hang nearby. Their letters remain tucked safely away. They are not heroes in this moment. They are not symbols. They are tired human beings asleep in a narrow room while others keep watch. There is something deeply peaceful in seeing people simply as people, needing rest, needing warmth, needing quiet. The boat gives them what it can. Not much, but enough. A blanket, a bunk, a rhythm, a watch kept by others, a chance to disappear into sleep. The control room gives them steadiness. The engine room gives them motion. The galley gives them warmth. The listening rooms give them distance. The hull gives them shelter. The sea gives them darkness. And the night gives them time. For a while, everything works together. The old war outside the story remains distant. The story does not deny it. It simply refuses to bring its noise into the room. It chooses instead the quieter truth that even during enormous events, life was still made of small minutes. A man lifting a cup. A man lowering his voice. A man folding a blanket. A man listening to static. A man measuring a line on a chart. A man asleep. These minutes are worthy of being remembered softly. Now the story begins to release the boat, not abruptly, not as an ending that closes a door, only slowly, like the tide drawing away from a shore. You may imagine the submarine continuing without you, the watch still turning, the lamp still glowing, the Atlantic still holding the hull, the men still moving through their narrow world with patience. You do not need to follow them all the way to morning. You may leave them here in a safe and steady hour, where nothing unusual has happened, and nothing sudden is waiting, and the boat remains calm beneath the sea. The red lights soften, the hum lowers in your mind, the chart becomes only a pale shape, the cup becomes only warmth, the bunk becomes only rest, the sea becomes only darkness, the darkness becomes only quiet, and the quiet becomes sleep. Let the control room fade, let the radio room fade, let the engine warmth fade, let the galley lamp fade, let the sleeping quarters fade. Let the Atlantic above and around the boat become distant, soft and deep. The vessel continues, but you do not need to continue with it. You may rest now. The watch is kept. The night is held. The world above is far away. There is nothing urgent for you to do, nothing to solve, nothing to finish, only breathing, only heaviness, only the soft return of your own quiet room around you. If thoughts come, let them pass like small sounds through water. If memories come, let them drift like pale lights seen far away. If the mind reaches for the story, give it only one image: a warm cup held in two tired hands, or a wool blanket pulled softly to the shoulder, or a red lamp glowing over a quiet chart, or the steady hum of a vessel moving slowly beneath a dark, calm sea. One image is enough. One breath is enough. One soft moment is enough. The submarine drifts on in the distance. The lamps are low. The men are quiet. The sea is dark. The night is nearly morning. And you're safe to let go. Breathe in softly. Breathe out slowly. Let the breath become quieter. Let the body become heavier. Let the story become mist. Let the mist become darkness. Let the darkness become rest. Nothing unusual. All steady. All quiet. All held. And as the old vessel continues beneath the Atlantic, far away in the dream of history, you may drift gently into sleep, carried by the same slow rhythm, deeper and softer, until even the hum fades and only peace remains.